Let's do it.
All right. Good everything.
Good everything,
All right.
everybody.
Happy Black, all of the things. The
It's a
blackest.
beautiful thing.
Happy Kazi.
Kazi is the blackest of all. This is the Kazi month. Indeed. How are you feeling?
I'm, how you gotta pat yourself. There's another plane crash last night. We were just talking before we got on, catching up, y'all. So Philly, middle of the street,
Yeah, I
people.
know exactly where that is, up Cotman Avenue by Roosevelt Mall. I know that. I've been on that road more times than I could ever count. And I was talking to some Philly folk last night. Shot. It was in the city, and everybody caught it on video.
Somebody's in a drive-through, and there's body parts. People are. So
Yeah,
I just want to center, the humanity, as so many
absolutely.
souls have. They were when you get on an airplane, you're going somewhere, and it's usually something that you want to get to,
Hmm.
and to not make it home, and to have a loved one not make it home, and to have the anticipation of going home, or going to a place where you're probably gonna enjoy yourself, to not make it. I'm
To not make
still gut punched by Kia Duggins, a young lady that you held up on Urban View Mornings with Lamont, and we played a clip from her, where she talked about why she went to law school, why she was fighting
hmm
for criminal justice, why police reform. Like, this was a young lady that was not just exceptional, but with a purpose. She went to law school with a purpose, and she's not here, in that helicopter debacle. That clearly is a, um, I guess I don't want to measure my words, a snapshot of where we are right now in terms of lack of leadership, lack of humanity, lack of accountability,
hmm
and it's costly. I have a friend that says stupid people get you killed. That's been her mantra forever, and she's
Yeah.
pointed to several things. Stupid people get you killed. She doesn't tolerate stupid people, and I'm zero tolerant, with it in my life. But now we have a nation run by stupid people.
Not now.
Oh,
Stupid people get you killed could be the national anthem of the United States of America. We're here speaking English because of stupid, racist, hateful humans. So yeah, if you take that out to zoom it out, then we should all be rethinking our relationship to this funky settler criminal enterprise. Stupid people get you killed. We're here because they couldn't kill us. Because if they could have, we'd be dead. So I agree with that 100%. In fact, probably more than most people think about. If you stop to think about it, yeah, I agree with that.
so
Stupid people
so
get you killed.
so every Saturday, 256 straight Saturdays, we have
Five, six.
attempted at least to do our part to eradicate stupidity. And
No, we've done our part to invite folk into the conversation. I think.
people are kicking and screaming not to be here, kicking and screaming not to learn, or or find ways to cast aspersions for people who are just trying to get you to know some things. You ain't got to know it. That's fine. And if you
Are
don't
there
like
are
it,
there aspersions being cast? Let's go with that.
I hear them in the wind. Like, I don't focus on them, and I don't lean into them. But it's interesting to me that instead of going out and doing the thing that you might think needs to be done, you're going to criticize people who are actually doing things. It's fine. You don't have to like what's being done here. You don't have to like us. You don't have to be here.
Um.
Then go do the thing that you need. Every time I look at the comments or whatever, I'm like, your channel has no content.
Oh no, I'm
Go,
here for
go
all that
produce
smoke.
go produce something. If you're not happy with what's being done or said here, go say the things in your space and invite people in. You don't have to
Mhm.
be here. This is an invitation. It's an open invitation at all. If you don't like it, go, and then let's see your work. Let's see your work.
Well, it's difficult with all the noise. There's a lot of there's always been a lot of noise, but the science and technology has now amplified it, and that is a very deliberate strategy, as we all know. I really, tip my hat to. There's one thing that whatever untreated disease ate what was left of the small brain that Donald Trump was gifted with at birth. One thing he has held on to is a real visceral sense of the lowest common denominator, of the bottom of the human psyche. He understands how to speak to that reptilian part. And we live in a society where that has been amplified to the point where people who do that, who can do that, like him and Elon Musk, for example, can really seize control of the logistics of how we go about our lives. So for people to criticize what we are doing, I invite, I think, as do you, conversation that is aimed at improving. But if there is no objective except trying to numb the pain that has been elicited from within someone's soul by this appeal to their reptilian part, I don't want to think about this. I don't want, you're pushing me to think. And so what comes out as criticism, I think, is really masking pain.
Mm.
You're in
Well,
pain. You're in
obviously,
pain.
yes, yes.
Yeah. I mean, or not, or it could just be purebred ignorance. But I mean, there's an element of that. But I mean, that ignorance comes from somewhere. It isn't, you weren't born with it. And we're gonna help you or not. What we're not gonna do is remain silent, and we're not gonna not be focused, especially February. Because we call this Black History Month because somebody who's incredible focus allowed him, one single person, to push back ignorance and to recruit others who felt the same way he did. But he was a metronome. Carter Woodson was a metronome. And so we can do no less but to follow in that. We can do a lot more. But, so I've been noticing, how old is this TikTok university business?
I don't know. I don't have TikTok. So I
No,
haven't.
I don't either, but the students do, and they were asking me about
Your
it. And
students?
of course, because it is the coin of the realm. Again, if you've been brought up in a society where you've been socialized to look for the quickest way to get to something, then that's catnip.
Oh,
And so I looked at a few things, and it's very titillating. And again, I'm glad on Monday night that we had that conversation with the elder, to talk about how you can use social media as a point of entry. I thought it was very,
that's exactly what I was going to say. And those of you who
yeah,
are wondering what Monday night is, so we have a community. Some of you are in it on YouTube. That's not where we live. We live in Nubia, and Nubia is with a K. The K is silent, but you can't get to Nubia except through the knowledge of narrative. So every Monday night, Dr. Carr has office hours. So we do in class with Carr, and then Monday office hours, where right now there is an Africana studies class being taught, and then there's in what do you call it?
like a class, not an ad for a class. What do you say?
So yes, that you teach a class, and then people come in and they talk with you.
Yeah, we have,
So
we have conversation.
it's a
Yeah,
conversation. And
yeah,
then on
yeah.
Tuesday is meta nature, and about to get a math class in as well. So,
Yes,
and Akil has been on the show, so Akil Parker,
yes.
shout out to him.
Yeah, I was with Akil last week in
Yeah,
Alabama. Good brother.
yeah. So all throughout the week we have different classes, but it's not what happens on TikTok. But I always say, however people get to it. If it's a nursery rhyme that gets you to read, Grimm's fables or some kind of comic book, whatever your entry point is, to take you on a journey like we do here on Saturday, dropping breadcrumbs, but it's a little bit more. It might be a moose bouche, or maybe maybe it's an appetizer, but it's not the full meal. But however you can get more knowledge, I'm excited.
I am too. It was interesting because my visceral response to anything freeze dried, particularly when and at nearing 60, for me it is a question of when we were born and raised and how we were brought to study and think. But I think for any generation, as we've been talking about now for years, the question of stolen focus, the question of moving image literacy has disrupted so much. So, but when Baba Roger came in, Roger Olds, on Monday night, and again, the Nubia space is so rich because everybody participates. I mean, we're talking about, you know, we don't we rarely, if ever, maybe on a holiday, maybe not, dip below at least a floor of 2,000. Often, many times more, that people come in on Monday and everybody's live. So I've taken to try to disrupt my own thinking around how we are in conversation. So a word that we have used repeatedly, Mbongi, Mbongi, from the Kikongo people, in Central Africa, West Africa, West Central Africa, well, also East Africa too. The concept of a house in which privacy has no room. What you think belongs to you. What you say belongs to us. There are many ways to say. So on Mondays in Meta Nature, or on Tuesdays with Dr. Beatty and Meta Nature in Nubia, or Monday nights with office hours with us, whether it be Sam Reynolds and astronomy, whether it be Sister Narissa, getting into the question of wellness, and of course our sister Sunyata Amin coming in, Maroon's Medicine Chest. What in common tech parlance is called the chat is simply another way of speaking in the Mbangi. It's happening now in Nubia. It's happening now on YouTube. People we've been socialized and instructed to call it the chat, but it's all speech, voice to voice, and finger through into, or speech function into the written form. And so as Baba Roger came in last Monday from Texas, talking about his nephew and how his nephew has apprenticed in the building trades, carpentry in particular, and how he employed his nephew to do some work around the house, and in the process really was recruiting him into an intergenerational dialogue. And he shared with us how that dialogue opened up, and how those instructions, which we will tie directly to Carter Godwin Woodson, how those instructions that he shared with his nephew, with your nephew Baba Roger, as he was working at his craft, repairing things around your house, really opened up into a conversation on how we speak to the generations. And he shared that his wife had watched a 2 or 3 minute TikTok video on a subject that they had been discussing for quite some time, and it achieved a clarity that he had been unable to help himself and her reach in conversation prior to her watching this stick figure phenomena that is on TikTok. And I am not against anything except ignorance. So as he was educating me and joining with others who were in the written speech function, and not just me, but others who were in the written function, who were also being pushed to think about how to use the technology, he said, this is a medium, and we would think about this in our Africana studies framework through the conceptual category of science and technology. Remember the 6 conceptual categories that frame us for those who are new here in the space: social structure, governance, science, ways of knowing, science and technology, cultural meaning making and movement, and memory. The science and technology category asks, whatever we're studying, if we're dealing with Africana, asks a simple question: how do Africans either create or adapt technology to serve their needs and to interact? And in this case, we're talking about social media in general, and TikTok in particular. And so he said, it's a good place. And I said, well, it's kind of like, I guess you could do an ad there. Yeah, it's good to do advertisements, short bursts, pique curiosity, points of entry, and then you move to the thing itself. So there is no Hillman talk. There is no Hillman University. It's not possible. It's not conceptually possible. What is possible is use it as a point of entry to do some studying. Because I'm tripping out people.
But let's be sober about where we are.
Mhm.
We have more access than ever to information and less reading and study than ever.
Exactly.
Okay, so if that's the case, and you've experienced in the classroom, I have as well. Children, people that go to school to get higher education have not studied their entire academic career. They get to college, they probably have never read a book for fun with deep knowledge. And we've seen this. People at Harvard said they have not read a book. Harvard have not read a book for any depth. You can't then fire hose people with information. It's just like giving a baby hard, solid food. So they need milk and or something soft to get them to another place. And I struggle with this myself, because we do radio. How much information do we, it's a 3-hour show Monday through Friday. How do we drop drop, 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 drop until the crust gets knocked off, until gray matter gets a little moist and supple, until, you know, it's a process, right? Like if you're kneading dough, you have to knead the dough, right? You don't just throw that flour and yeast and expect to get bread. So baking analogy. So I just, you know, I feel like however we can get people, we have to leave space for it all. And then they can come here and get the full meal. But people aren't going to come here if their tummy hurts or where their brain aches. If it's like, ah, it's too much, I can't process it. So I love the gateways and the bridges and all of the different ways that people are awakening, because we need more people to be woke. And I'm saying that on purpose.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. Yeah, I agree. Of course, I represent or I'm part of an arc that rejects the turn from throwing you to the deep end. So I can see and I can hear Jamie McDonald Williams and Lois McDougall. I can hear them wincing because they threw me in the deep end, and I'm grateful for it. John Clark.
Right.
And I realized that
you could swim.
No, I couldn't.
No, but you could.
That's not the point. Well, I could. I was born able to swim. Right. And I think that's their point.
And the way, and we have to be honest about this too. The way you are is not the way most people are, Dr. Carr. The way your brain functions, the way you perceive, and sure, I'm sure it's 50-something years of process. But I also think you were born and imbued with something very special, which is why you're here to do that thing, right? And everybody has their role to play. And you are the one, once you get the crust off your brain, where people need to come and sit at your feet and get all that. But not everyone, yes, but not everyone.
I'm not a sit at feet kind of person, but yeah, I hear what you're saying.
All right, or whatever. Just sit at the side.
Being a community. We're in community with each other. Everybody knows something.
Correct. Yeah. You know a lot more. And the way you read and all, like, you cannot compare yourself, sir.
I hear what you're saying. But I also know that children can memorize every lyric that Jay-Z spits in a very rapid order fashion. So it's not that they're incapable. They've just been trained to apply that intelligence to something stupid.
So now you're looking at somebody trained 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Listen, I had shared last week that I had to get back into learning how to read.
Oh, of course.
Me, somebody that's read thousands of books, you know.
And written, right. No question. You're a writer, not just a reader, right.
I'm sitting there mad at myself. I'm like, ma'am, can you pay attention? Like, why is your brain wandering, sit here and read? So it took me 2 days to get back. But that's, again, 50 years of actually having to do something. And 1 year off put me in a position where I've struggled to get through.
And how did you reset?
I sat with myself and made myself do it 1 chapter at a time, and then 2 chapters, and then 3, and then I was like, okay, I'm back. Okay, I can't wait to get up and read now. But it took
in the quiet. Right? You got to turn it off.
Yes, I did. You got
to turn it off. That's the only way you can get it, and that's why I say there is no TikTok university. There's no Hillman University. What there is stolen focus. There is. So when I see somebody saying, and I thought it was very interesting. I saw somebody. Saw one of the little shorts, and I guess there's a professor, someone who's teaching the class, and I kind of, I thought for a minute, that's interesting, because I know that the students who are literally sitting in my class, I know and the students who sit in your classes, you know the real time work that has to be done to get that thing convened. So to see people posting videos, I signed up, I got the syllabus, I got homework, and I'm thinking to myself, y'all don't do homework in real time. So what is this? This is just cosplay. I know you're not gonna.
No, I think we should. Just me.
I'm not criticizing. I'm just. I'm thinking about it in context. You know what I'm saying?
But we're in a time when the vast majority, and again, I wrestle with this every day. I know we're in the vast minority. I know because I look at the numbers. Right? There are people with 20 million followers and 10 million followers. People, people come in mass, but I'm always reminded that narrow is the road that leads to salvation. Few will travel it. So I don't get caught up in the numbers, but I also recognize that that's the norm. This is our norm. This is the new normal, right? We're doing the renewed normal in Nubia, but to get people to come here, I was just thinking, give us Barabbas. The people aren't, and they get hostile when you challenge them as well. So we're in the midst of people being hostile because they're ignorant and hurt and mad, and they want to tear everything up and cuss everybody out and be angry and respond to everything, as opposed to sit in their own ignorance and figure out how I can work through it. There's no self-accountability, assessment. And so what we do every day is why it's the consistency, is why it's the drumbeat, it's the drop of water, it's the clean water. People who will want that, they'll come to it, and maybe it'll take them a minute. And if they don't, that's fine. There's no cajolement. We're not cajoling you to do better, but we're going to just be here for the people that are finally, getting to a place. But I don't want to. Well, Dr. Carr, is so vast. Thank you. So vast how ignorant is the default. It's the default.
Oh, we know that. We know that. We experience it. And of course, yeah. And then the pain comes, because
yes,
ultimately pain will come. And sometimes that pain can reveal and lead to a corrective. And that's why we have to continue what we're doing, because, we see people moving that way. It's very encouraging to see people say they want to learn. Now, I would never drive anyone to a university to do that. We've spent a great deal of time moving away from that. The university is a resource. Formal education is a resource, but it is not the source.
Let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
So Carter G. Woodson, parents were enslaved.
Mm-hmm.
Enslaved people were beaten, tortured, killed for reading. It was illegal. It was illegal to teach an enslaved person to read. It was torture. If you were found reading, you can get your eyes gouged out. Okay, so now, quote unquote, liberation happens, and people were running to the thing that they were told they couldn't do. Or
yes.
was it? Because there was a high level of literacy, school starting, and
oh, sure, yeah. When you're talking about us, yeah, there was a deep thirst for education. Absolutely.
Okay. We're in a time when everybody has access to everything,
or at least the appearance of access.
That's what I'm saying. And there's an illusion that somehow there's no penalty for learning, and people are doing just the opposite. So
right.
In the time that Carter G. Woodson was reading to the coal miners who couldn't read,
mm-hmm.
and taking it upon himself to make sure he taught, there was a thirst for knowledge. Those coal miners knew the importance of knowing things, because they couldn't have access. They couldn't just go to school. My dad just couldn't go down the street to Seton Hall. If you tell people they can't do something, they're going to thirst to do it. Now it's the illusion that we can do it all, and nobody's doing it, right? Or a lot of people aren't doing it. So how do you teach in a time when the illusion is we have access to all this information, but no one's doing study? You said something that was so profound that I keep repeating it. There's reading and then there's study, and study calls you to action. And I said,
oh yeah,
that's how you know we're not studying.
Yeah,
people are changing
not acting,
how they behave and seeking and doing other things. So how do you teach in the time? And listen, I'm glad I'm out of the classroom. The last 2 years, it was, I promise you, I thought I was going to catch a case at some point. I said, this is, because I'm zero tolerant, and I have a certain kind of way that I, communicate. And these kids, all kind of charges would have probably been brought up on me. And I was,
yeah, they tried me.
Yeah,
they tried me too. Some of them trying me right now. No, actually, yeah, I got a few from last semester. They reaching out. They didn't like their grades, and so I understand. And as I told the dean, who had the nerve to ask me about it, yeah, man, you want to see? I record all my classes, baby. Do you want to have this? Do you really want to have it? Let's talk. So I'm gonna go see him next week. Talk about that. But yeah, it's a different world.
But to fight somebody that is paying for your knowledge, I mean, think of how absurd this is. Somebody is paying to sit in a classroom with one of the best teachers of our time, and won't show up, aren't doing the reading, aren't engaging, aren't.
And on the other end of the spectrum, there are those who do. Sure.
Yes, but they're paying for
many
this.
of them, sure,
right?
Sure.
And they're paying for this. And then the people who are here getting this for free, challenging, ain't read nothing for deep understanding, but you want to challenge everything that comes out of this man's mouth.
Of
Like,
course.
why? Why? Who are you? Why? What are you doing?
No, no, no. I'm used to that. I mean,
I know, but
that's what we do, right?
it's the absurd that I'm talking about. It is so
Ah, I
ridiculous,
see what you're
right?
saying.
So here we are, 500, 256 Saturdays in a row,
Yeah.
Monday through Friday on the radio. And
Hmm.
and you know, at some point last year I got really frustrated, and now I'm very energized because we're in the finding out portion, and people either will get it or they won't.
Or they won't.
But we're gonna keep doing what we do, and
Exactly.
you're gonna do what you do, and I'm not you. So we do things
I'm
slightly
not you.
differently.
But together, that's how we do. It's an arduous road. You're right. As you always say, narrow is the way. And when you face it, I'm glad you raised Oliver Jones and those brothers in that in his parlor, in his coal mine, in his parlor near the coal mine in what is now West Virginia, when Carter Woodson, as a teenager, who, along with his siblings, was required to learn how to read by his uncles, his mother, Mary, Eliza, rather, James and Eliza, his parents, Eliza, his mother's brothers who who fought. I don't like to use the parlance served at this moment, perhaps never. When you think about the military, I mean, they were fighting for their liberation, particularly when you have an open white Christian fascist patriarch nationalist like Pete Hegseth canceling all of the, Martin Luther King holiday and the observation in Juneteenth. You cancel them all, my friend. We'll roll over you like the sea. Do you think a program at the Pentagon is somehow a proxy for how we study ourselves? You're only depriving those who really want to join our common humanity from awareness. And we will help you with that because you seem to think somehow you can police them from coming on YouTube. My friend, you've already lost. You're a dead cultural man walking with your silly American flag lined suit jacket. But in that space, I don't use the parlance of served. They fought in the Civil War. Eliza Woodson's brothers, who then acquired the capacity to read and write in English that we call literacy, and taught those children. So Carter Woodson can read when he went into those coal mines, when he followed his siblings, his brothers, into the coal mines of West Virginia as a teenager. And when the older men who, as did Carter Woodson's uncles, fought in the Civil War, who were working alongside him in the coal mine, when they put a fraction of their salaries together and pooled that money and used that money to acquire a small library of books, to subscribe to newspapers, and all of those things were kept in the parlor of the home of one of the miners, Oliver Jones. When Woodson would go there with these men who had not yet acquired the capacity to read and write in English, what we call literacy, he read to them. He read to his father James. And, as we've said many times, and I'm not going over any of this again, except by a point of reference, it's interesting again to take in the spirit of Hillman talk. Let's do it that way. Realizing that this isn't the class, even though it's called in class, it is a class. It is a form of class. Certainly it's not a 2 or 3 minute burst referring to a class or a few facts. It's a longer form. But in the spirit of that point of entry and use of the technology, which is exactly what we're doing today and have been doing now for 5 years and in a longer form, in the spirit of that, I would refer everyone back to narrative and to the extensive bibliography that continues to be added to. And in that bibliography, if you look at our conversations on Carter Woodson, particularly around February, but not only February, I will refer you back to when we talked about the children's book, Carter Reads the Newspaper. Just go into the bibliography and search for that, and you'll find it. Now, I did I brought up a few. Probably, if you look at session 44, the one entitled John Hope Franklin and Institutional Knowledge, that was our first deeper dive into Woodson. So I'm not going to repeat all of that, not even most of it, maybe a fraction of it, by way of pointing back toward the longer work, which itself is an invitation to do a deeper study. But if you get the children's book, just the children's book, you talk about literacy, get it for your children. And then while they're not looking, sneak around and read it yourself. I love children's books. And so I was looking for my copy of Carter Reads the Newspaper last night, and I couldn't find it. I hope I didn't put it in storage, because usually I keep my Woodson stuff in one place. But we were thinking about that. But at any rate, session 44, it gives you a beautiful illustrated walkthrough of how Woodson's literacy opened up to others. And I'm glad you mentioned Oliver Jones and those other coal miners, and how Woodson read the newspapers to them, read from those books they acquired to them, thinking about the 2-volume George Washington Williams History of the Negro in Africa and America, which they had acquired, and Woodson read to them from that. And Carter Woodson, who would go on to become the second person of African descent to get a PhD from Harvard University, and the first person of any background to have gotten a PhD from Harvard University, his in history, who had come from formerly captive people. Woodson, who acquired all the degrees as licenses to give him access to certain institutions. But Woodson, who would say that the most intense study group he participated in was not anything at Harvard, not anything at Howard, where he was a dean for about a year and a quarter until he finally couldn't take it no more, not any conversation he had at his house on 9th Street, which is run now by the National Park Service, with people like Charles Harris Wesley, or students of his like Lorenzo Johnson Green, or younger proteges like Rayford Logan, with his very good friend, dear friend, who eulogized him after he passed in April 1950 in the pages of the Journal of Negro History, Marion McLeod Bethune, his comrade and very good friend, Nannie Helen Burroughs. And he would say that none of those conversations displaced the fact that his grounding, his intellectual foundation, was not in the academy, but it was in that little parlor with Oliver Jones and those coal miners. It's important to understand that we were born with everything we need in order to acquire the type of momentum of memory and application of our innate genius to problem solve as a species. And that the illusion in human society is that you have to go somewhere to acquire something that you were born with. Don't mistake familiarity with content with intelligence. These are two different things. Or that there should be a test applied to measure your capacity to know. Those things are set up in order to convene people around other people's agendas, hierarchies. It's very important to understand that. And so if you go and look at session 44, John O. Franklin and Institutional Knowledge, you can then learn about Carter Woodson. I've spent a lot of time since I was in Alabama and Georgia this time last week thinking about genealogies. Had this conversation with my students in my Introduction to Afro-American Studies class at Howard on Thursday morning. Standing at the graves of my grandmother and grandfather, my mother's parents. Grandmother made transition in 1970. My grandfather made transition in 1973. I knew them both. Both of them were born in 1891, 5 years before Plessy versus Ferguson. Both of them were born in 1891. Carter Woodson was 16 years old. When my mother's parents were born, who I knew, Carter Woodson was reading that newspaper and those books to those coal miners. Their parents and community have been born in captivity. There is no time between the whip and today. As I stood there Sunday morning pouring libation at my mother's parents' graves with some of their children and, grandchildren around them, their remains. Water for all of them, then water and a little dip of coffee to my first drug dealer, Thomas Hayes Sr. I thought about the fact that there is no time between us and them. And as Mario Beatty said later that day at the grave of John Henry Clark, in the ancient Egyptian language, the main concept, the word for ancestors, as he has said many times and taught many times, including in the Metanetric class in Nubia, ancestors translates as those in front of you. We are not moving away from our ancestors. We are moving toward them in time. and space. And so to think about the idea that I didn't know Carter Woodson as he walked on top of the earth, but I did know John Hope Franklin, not well, a couple of passing conversations. But John Franklin, born in 1915, the same year that Carter Woodson started the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. John Franklin, who was born in 1915, the same year that John Clark was born on January 1st, who knew Carter Woodson, the same John Franklin who knew Woodson, I knew. There is no time in terms of generations. And of course, as I remind those who would stunt our collective African imagination by beginning their history in chains, did not your ancestors have ancestors? There is no time between those who experienced captivity and those who did not. And so today, on February the 1st, whenever you're watching this, whether it be tomorrow, the 2nd, whether it be next February, whenever, because this is why we do what we do like a metronome, week after week after week after week. We are determined, as the ancient Egyptians would say, do not swerve, because you are the standard. Do not act lightly, because you have weight. You have great weight. We do this. So whenever you're looking at this, understand that because we are facing the white heat of a dying white nationalism, a global white nationalism, this may very well be, since its inception in 1926 here in the United States, this may very well be the blackest History Month ever. Why? Because it needs to be. We won't be any more black. We won't be any more African. However, what we do have an opportunity to be is so much more aware. This is a repository that we have built and continue to build, a living testament, as Baba Mariba Kelsey, who he and his wife, Mama Nyambi, were with us in Alabama last weekend, as he reminded us there at the grave of John Clark on Sunday afternoon. This is a living book. We have to continue to write pages in this testament. We invented writing. We invented it. We came here, the first humans capable of speech were Africans. We gave that to the world as we walked out and migrated around the globe. And every human who ever walked this earth came out of Africa. So as their parents, you see, even the wayward children, Stephen Miller, Stephen Bannon, Donald Trump, even the wayward ones, the equipment with which you spit your venom, the tongue in your mouth, the skin on your face, came out of a genealogy that begins in the womb of an African woman. So we have a responsibility. This might be the blackest History Month ever. Carter Woodson, we talked about him in session 44, a long time, but also session 49 and 93 and 182. Carter reads the newspaper. If you go back to session 93 and session 182, we read from that children's book again. We talk about the fact that when we developed the lessons in Africana studies, which was the conceptual framework, the curriculum framework. That's where the conceptual categories first emerged. The curriculum framework for the mandatory high school course in Philadelphia that all students must take in African American history. That framework is where the conceptual categories had their gestation and birth. 20 years ago this year, shout out to Ishmael Jimenez, who directs African American Studies now for the School District of Philadelphia, Tony Waltington, the chancellor, Dr. Waltington, the chancellor. I'll be going up there at some point this year to mark that anniversary, and looking forward to reminding, because I don't let things go when they're important. You got to remind folk, because we've been doing curriculum now for a very long time. And I don't mean by we, I don't mean me. I'm part of a longer arc, and many people who do curriculum are here today. So, lessons in Africana studies, we talked about the fact that when we developed that, the first lesson after the framing questions and conceptual categories lessons that was written for that curriculum framework was one called Intellectuals of the African Diaspora. I'll be quoting from that today. It's called Intellectuals of the African Diaspora, Carr G. Woodson, and the Origins of African American History Month. Where we go through the history of Carter Woodson. If you want to go back, and I encourage you to go back into the archive now, because many of these sessions are actually available on the YouTube side. All of them on the narrative side, but many of them, the majority on the YouTube side as well. Go to session 152 and 153. If you want the actual document that I'm reading from then, and we'll gesture toward today, back in the day when everybody had a website, and I still pay the fee, an annual fee, to maintain the website, because there are documents there and there are videos there, and I like to, from time to time I'll add things out. Shout out to my sister Noelle in Chicago, who really had a vision for we need to go online years ago. She was working with ASCAC. The lesson is there, so you can go to drgregcarr.com and you can just download the lesson in Africana Studies, Intellectuals of the African Diaspora, which begins with 3 quotes, and I'll read them in short order because you can go back to session 93 and 182 to see the extensive conversation in this, perhaps the Blackest History Month. Carter Woodson said that Negro History Week is the week set aside by the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History for the purpose of emphasizing what has already been learned about the Negro during the year. Carter Woodson, this is the editorial activities for Negro History Week, which we're going to be talking about. I included that document in the document. So young people, elders who want to teach, but when we need curriculum, we need materials, we need a book list. Everybody calm down. Everybody calm down. Somebody could actually make a TikTok of this, because I'm not adept at the technology. If y'all want to do that and with a little words flash across, if everybody want, no. Clip this one. Go to drgregcarr.com and download the curriculum lesson with lesson plan questions, the framing questions, the conceptual categories are there. Intellectuals of the African Diaspora, Carter G. Woodson and the Origins of African American History Month. And you will find not only the quote I just read at the beginning of that small lesson, but a footnote. And at the bottom of the page, it gives you the source, which is Carter Woodson's editorial activities for Negro History Week, written in the Negro History Bulletin, volume 6, number 4, January 1943, page 94. I didn't go get it because in that lesson, I got over there, it's scanned into the lesson. So that document is at the end, and we're going to use that document as the heart of what I want to talk about today, because on this February 1st, we're resetting. But we're not setting to do something new. We're resetting to something that has been put in place for us to triumph over all of this foolishness in this Blackest, perhaps, History Month. The second of the 3 quotes, Carter Woodson says in a editorial written in the Journal of Negro History, volume 12, number 2, from April 1927, page 105. Dr. Woodson says, quote, "This is the meaning of Negro History Week." Pause. Let me go back. YouTube Shorts serving a function like TikTok. Professor Hunter, thank you. And again, pulling together a team that's capable of doing this. I saw late in the hour last night in the wee hours of the morning that somehow you had excised out, you and the team, what I'm about to say, which I had said before, again, sessions 152 and 153, and dropped it as a YouTube short on the Knarrative site. If you're in Knarrative now, you're not subscribed, subscribe to that channel. Freak the algorithm, as Professor Hunter would say. The quote is, "This is the meaning of Negro History Week. It is not so much a Negro History Week as it is a history week. We should emphasize not Negro history, but the Negro in history." To see those words pop up on the screen in the YouTube short, I see. But the Negro in history, what we need, Woodson writes, is not a history of selected races or nations, but the history of the world void of national bias, race hate, and religious prejudice. Woodson writes, "There should be no indulgence in undue eulogy of the Negro. The case of the Negro is well taken care of when it is shown how he, she, they, I'm editing there, has influenced the development of civilization." So Woodson's like, you don't just confine it to February. In fact, February is just when you remind yourself of what you studied the entire year. And I did edit. I said he, she, they. I know that's driving the white nationalists crazy. But again, your little brain, which whatever disease you contracted as a teenager or 20-something that went untreated and has now began to invade your mind in a way that just adds to the fact that you didn't have much to work with in the beginning, Trump. For you to say now and through your Christian soldier now at the Pentagon that you're going to require that all pronouns be removed from emails, I welcome it, my friend, my wayward son. I welcome it because you are clarifying what we must do to overrun you, to enter your soul and remove this, not even obstacle, but provocation to a higher humanity from our path. And so I did edit that. That's Carter Woodson, The Celebration of Negro History Week, 1927. Finally, the last quote I will refer to again that we talked about extensively in session 44, also 152 and 153, comes from that great Mary McLeod Bethune out of South Carolina. Mary McLeod Bethune, the institution builder. Mary McLeod Bethune coming to Daytona Beach, Florida, at a garbage dump with a handful of pennies and eventually erecting a school that still graduates folks today, Bethune-Cookman University. Mary Bethune wrote just as Carter Woodson made transition in an editorial called, oh, let me add, I'll say hers first. The May 1950 issue of the Negro History Bulletin, Mary McLeod Bethune says, I shall always believe in Carter Woodson. He helped me to maintain faith in myself. He gave me renewed confidence in the capacity of my race for development and in the capacity of my country for justice, for her own people, and for all peoples. With the power of cumulative fact, he moved back the barriers and broadened our vision of the world and the world's vision of us. That's Mary Bethune, but that's at the end of the lesson. The lesson is not very long, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages, and then a page for teacher notes, a timeline of Dr. Woodson's life, and then the primary documents, 3 of them, the entire op-ed, I'm sorry, not op-ed, the entire editorial from Mary McLeod Bethune, at the time was the president of the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, May 1950. That document is there. Also, the page we'll be focusing on today, Activities for Negro History Week, is there. It is a guide for the Blackest History Month. All of the months are Black History Month. All of the months are Black Memory Month because we are African people. But perhaps February is the blackest month because there's a concentration of what you've learned the entire year. Maybe we should edit friendly amendment. Instead of saying Negro History Week or Black History Month, maybe we should say Blackest History Month. Why? Because all of them are Black, but this is the blackest because it is convergence of all of the Blackness from March, April, May, June, July, September, October, November, December, January. This is the blackest because all of them are Black. This is the blackest. Blackest History Month. I can hear the wheels turning from the Knarrative team. Is that going to be a February hoodie? Blackest History, because all of them Black history. And then on the back, maybe each month, Black women's history, Black Latin history, Black indigenous history, Black, see, because Black Asian history. Oh, come on now. Any month, well, they got a month. Are there no Black women? No. Well, they took a month because we had a month. You ain't got no Black women. All the months. Black Technology, Black Music Month. That's June, thanks to James Earl Carter making it observing it federally. But really, Diana Williams and all the crew out of Philadelphia International in Philadelphia, the Sound of Philadelphia, did that. But there are many ways to do it. Maybe this is the Blackest History Month. So finally, the 3 primary documents, actually 4. What am I doing? I done forgot. There are best practices in there. There are other lessons in there. Those aren't the only things. I included in there activities from the Journal of Negro History for Negro History Week from the Journal of Negro History, included Dr. Du Bois's eulogy for Carter Woodson, called A Portrait of Carter G. Woodson. So those are other 2 documents, and so I'll just read the final quote. There were 3 I was thinking of, but I'll add the 4th because this is Du Bois, who often sparred with Woodson. Woodson passed April 1950. And yeah, I see that. Federal employees received the email that we can no longer celebrate Black History Month at work. How are they going to stop you? So when they come in, are you talking about Black history? Why? What are you talking about? You mean they're not going to have an official moment? You got a lunch break. You know what? I'm talking about, look, y'all. I am in love with what's going on right now. Because, when your master don't want you no more, you might figure out that you don't need a master. And then the real revelation, you don't want a master. So yes, it's convenient. Yes, and I got a lot of friends who are crying now because they count on February to make some money. Some of them derisively call Black History Month Green History Month, but all those speaking engagements being canceled. But it's a beautiful thing when you have your own. As Eamon Walker told the character in Cadillac Records when he was playing Howlin' Wolf, told the Leonard Chef's character when it was time to pay for the funeral of little Walter. And he pulled a bankroll out of his pocket when Muddy Waters, played by the great Jeffrey Wright, didn't have no money to help bury his friend. Last night, I lost the best friend I ever had. Maybe that scene when little Walter stumbles in and then, dies there. And anyway, that moment when Howlin' Wolf looks at Leonard Chess, pulls a bankroll out and said, I'm going to pay for the funeral. And Chess is like, I'll pay for it. He said, nah, we pay for this. And Howlin' Wolf is like, oh, man. Because Wolf ain't got no money. He asking the white man for money because, he Cadillacs and this guy. He paying him in Cadillacs. Right? Wolf is like, nah, just pay me what you owe me. Damn Cadillac. That truck out there, that old truck I drove from Mississippi, it runs fine. And Wolf looked and said, it feel good not to have no daddy. That don't mean not to have a father, but you, white man, not my daddy. Yes, they canceled Black History Month and Juneteenth and Martin Luther King birthday observations. They can't cancel the ritual. Hell, some Negroes was mad when Juneteenth got made a federal holiday. Now you mad that they ain't gonna let you celebrate. We wasn't celebrating Juneteenth with your permission anyway. The whole purpose of Juneteenth was it ain't your permission. It feel good not to have a daddy. George Washington, you're not my dad. It feel good not to have a daddy. So my friends who were counting on that money, I feel bad for the temporary pain, but when you build something on your own narrative, newbie, it feels good not to worry about those things. We have everything we need. Carter Woodson took a little grant money from folk. When he built the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, he anchored it in the community. It wasn't a university-based enterprise, even though he had a university degree. He had several of them, Berea College, Harvard University. Yes, he had several, University of Chicago master's degree. He had college degrees, but that wasn't the center. It was the periphery. Don't be looking at the university as the periphery. I don't care whether it's Harvard, Howard, or TikTok or Hillman, which don't exist. All of them equally peripheral to the community. And when Du Bois wrote the Reflection on the Life of Carter G. Woodson in 1950 in Masses and Mainstream, the journal Masses and Mainstream, and I have the original copy. It took me years to track it down, but I have now the magazine it came from, but many years before I'd had the document, which is why it is in the lesson that you can download, and I would encourage you, if you haven't already done it, to download it. It was Du Bois who wrote Carter Godwin Woodson, who died in Washington on April 3rd, 1950, at the age of 71, illustrates what race prejudice can do to a human soul, and also what it is powerless to prevent. From subscriptions to his quarterly, from donations made by small groups and organizations, from sales of books, Woodson not only continued to publish the Journal of Negro History, he also went into the publishing business. Oh, Karen Hunter, I know I can hear that in your soul. This is what he also went into the publishing business and issued a score of books written by himself and others. so-called coats, and then as the crowning achievement, he established Negro History Week. He literally made this country, which has only the slightest respect for people of color, recognize and celebrate each year a week in which it studied the effect in which the American Negro has had on life, thought, and action in the United States. I know, Du Bois writes, of no one man who in a lifetime has unaided, built up such a national celebration. Du Bois, friendly amendment ancestor, as I'm moving towards you, as my heart beats, and I will join you in the cemetery and in the ancestral realm beyond. You and your wife, Shirley Graham, and your wife before that, who made transition before that, Nina Gomer, and little Berghart, the baby, and Yolande, your daughter, and your grandson. And yeah, as I move towards you, a friendly amendment ancestor, Woodson wasn't thinking about the United States. He was thinking about Africa in the world. Negro History Week was ultimately designed, as we will see in a moment, to think about the African presence in world history. The United States, just the immediate social structure context. So, and Du Bois knew that. Sometimes I wonder if Du Bois put a little shade in him at the end. Not just a national celebration, my friend. And that's okay. We'll get to that. So as I said, looking at the clock here, as I said, the in-class sessions, I'm just adding today, referring to the archive, to the compendium, to, as Marie Kelsey would say, the living book of our conversations on this, the first day of what might be the Blackest History Month ever, for some review, but it's also accretive. We're adding to it. Serious study will require going into the archive now. And unlike the policed archives of the academy, where you got to pay for a firewall, or if you ain't registered or you ain't alum, you can't go. This one here is open access. You know, open access. It's what's driving Wall Street in a frenzy after the Chinese released an open access AI. Is that we live in the world, not the four corners of the concept of United States. Somebody will remind Trump, as he imposes some funky ass little tariffs on Mexico and Canada, that they are going to retaliate. Even Justin Trudeau, the outgoing prime minister of Canada, has said yesterday, well, we're going to have to put some tariffs. Now, Claudia Scheinbaum is like, hey, baby, you're going to do what? Let's go. But we live in a world, not the four corners of the United States of America. And Woodson's vision transcended the borders of this funky criminal enterprise. You see? And so we're just adding to that. We built quite a compendium of references. And we've used the Africana Studies framework to serve as a roadmap and a narrative guide. Again, I got no problems with, and certainly after listening to Baba Roger as he walked us all through how to use this technology and its benefits, I certainly can embrace that very much. So I have no problems with TikTok or Hillman University, whatever, YouTube, Facebook. We're on YouTube now. I mean, obviously, all these technologies we don't own. And at the same time, I am aware that these fleeting spectacles, they're fleeting spectacles. These hashtags fleet. Next week, next month, next year, be something else. Right now is this, and that's great. But fleeting spectacles, devoid of a guiding way of knowing or commitment to movement and memory, two of our conceptual categories, highlight the need for that deeper reflection that can be sparked by these points of entry, but cannot be achieved through shallow engagement. Shallow engagement is better than no engagement at all. And that point of entry, as I saw some people on social media saying, okay, this is great, TikTok. Now, they've been doing this for about 5 years. What, Hunter and Carr and everybody with them, the thousands, the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands, over the arc of 5 years, literally the millions. Literally, it's not a boast or a brag. It's an observation of the number of people who have engaged and continue to engage in this space as it echoes out beyond. And that's just the numbers that are tallied on the devices, not the number of people. You really can't estimate that. And these 5 years are tied to, very deliberately, week after week, month after month, year after year, to the innumerable sources that pour into these conversations. That's why I always will raise here representatives like the Carr G. Woodson Academy for Black Studies at my beloved Paul Laurence Dunbar High School, who will be celebrating this month. Probably had that smart black and dope on the Nubia Garima leading that crew. So I'll always raise the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, their annual on the 15th of February, African American Studies, African American Studies, my God, African American History, Black History Luncheon will be here in the district, and I'm supposed to be moderating a panel for them. So shout out to Dr. Sylvia Cyrus and all the folks. I'll be there with them for part of the 15th. I got a couple other places I'd go that day. But I mean, I'm always going to raise all these other people because it ain't me. I'm just the person talking about it right now. And if I were to take some time and reflect and try to figure out, okay, I could do this and make a hip hop, make a rap, record and put all these people's names in it and get it in a way and maybe drop the kind of titillating stuff in to get people to repeat it. I could do that. I have no doubt I could do it. But why? Why would I do that? I came out of a speech tradition too, and that speech tradition is part of the tradition that hip hop came out of, and I will reference it, but there are others who can do it and who have committed to do it better than I can. So fleeting spectacles like TikTok University, Hillman Talk, whatever, devoid of a guiding philosophy, a guiding commitment to movement and memory, highlight the need for deeper reflection that can be sparked, but cannot be achieved through shallow engagement. And while I'm talking about that momentarily, as we get back into Woodson, we must also resist the distraction of centering race as a lens for attempting to heal from trauma-forced narratives. Instead, we got to embrace that long view genius, that enduring resilience of our ancestors. That's what Woodson was talking about. Woodson's concept of Negro History Week that became Black History Month, and I want to pause here as well to raise, and if I could pull it up, I have these screens up, and I'm kind of just going through. I don't know that I could pull it up quickly. There's an article that appeared in USA Today. I don't see it. Yeah, I don't know what I did with it. USA Today, it just dropped last night. Actually, here it is right here. USA Today. Let me just make sure. No, this ain't the one. Oh, well. Oh, here it is. Yes. It's called Black History Month, What to Know About the Celebration. And, I'm not one to quote USA Today a lot, but this one, I want to raise this young sister, Celine Martin, SALEEN, Celine Martin from Norfolk, from the 757, Norfolk, Virginia, who contacted me yesterday after Lamont and I finished on Urban View. And I want to pause here, of course, to ring the bell for the great Joe Madison, as we did all day yesterday, raising the name of Joe Madison, who made transition 1 year ago yesterday, to his family and everyone. We just raised that. And so many people who called in yesterday and raised the name of Joe Madison. But after we got off the air, I spoke with this young sister, Celine Martin, who wrote an article on Black History Month and used me kind of like as her point of entry for information on Black History Month. I just dropped it in the YouTube chat, and I'll drop it in the narrative chat shortly. I have that pulled up as well. And I'll just, I'll go through it because it's easier to do this than to go through, and this is quicker. She writes, Saturday marks the start of Black History Month, a time to honor Black people and the Black experience. And while Black history celebrations have been held for decades, some people may not realize how this month-long celebration began. It all started with a scholar named Carter G. Woodson, who founded the Association for the Study of African American Life and History in 1915 to research, preserve, and disseminate knowledge about Black life. Dr. Carr, Greg Carr, an associate professor in the Department of African American Studies at Howard University in Washington, D.C., said that Woodson founded the organization while he was a graduate student, which is true. 1915, Chicago, the YMCA. Conrad Worrell, our recent ancestor, his father, Walter Worrell, there at that Wabash Avenue YMCA, helped run the colored YMCA at the time. I mentioned that because I remember that. Anyway, we talked about that. Again, going to archive. I talked about all that, but I wanted to raise Conrad Worrell's name as well. If you don't know that name, Worrill, you should know that name. Also on the 15th of February is the Jacob Carruthers Conference in Chicago. It is a virtual conference. As we get a little bit closer to the date, I'll give people more information. If you are part of the Kemetic Institute, you can drop that in both chats as well. If we've got some of the folks here, Larry Crow, Muriel Balla, Ife Carruthers, so many others, Yvonne Jones, so many others, Charles and Carolyn Grantham, Rosetta Cash, maybe. Going on in the article, February 1926, Carter Woodson started Negro History Week. And after university students and staff pushed to extend the celebration, it evolved into Black History Month, as it is currently recognized in the United States. Born in Virginia, Woodson was the second African American to receive a PhD from Harvard and the first to earn a PhD from Harvard born to enslaved parents, according to Carr. I like to use captive now, but I understand she got an editor. So, this is how these things work. Woodson was made an honorary member of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity on February 10th, 1917. Shout out to the Sons of Blood and Thunder. I know y'all are in here. I know Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Wright. If nobody else going to raise the cues, I'm not going to make the signal because I don't want y'all coming here after me. Woodson was made an honorary member of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity on February 10th, 1917. And in 1924, members of the fraternity called Q's, she got that in past the editors, didn't she? Launched the Negro History and Literature Week, according to Carr. Dr. Woodson, this is a quote from me, Dr. Woodson kind of seized upon his membership in Omega Psi Phi and his determination to link the study of our history to communities, end quote, Carr said, quote, he recruited the Omegas into helping him establish what he called Negro History Week, which emerged a couple of years later, end quote. She goes on. He chose the second week of February for Negro History Week because of its link to Abraham Lincoln's birthday on February 12th and Frederick Douglass's birthday, or Douglas Day, which falls on February 14th. What she and I talked about, which probably the editors got her for a link on it, was that Douglas Day was the brainchild in 1897 of the great Mary Church Terrell. Yeah, Mary Church Terrell, who we've talked about. Going to the compendium, we've done extensive work on Mary Church Terrell. In that first year, Prof and I, talking about her father, Robert Church, talking about the whole context. But Mary Church Terrell said in Washington, D.C., the colored schools should take that day, the birthday of Fred Douglass, who said, my mother referred to me as her Valentine, so I use February 14th as my birthday. We should use that day as a holiday, as Douglas Day. That's what Mary Church Terrell said, 1897. Of course, Terrell knew Nanny Ellen Burroughs, knew Miriam Clyde Bethune, knew Carter G. Woodson, all those people living in Washington, D.C., and Woodson, inspired, instructed by that February date, adds, in order to put Blackness in the heart of the American criminal enterprise, the birthday 2 days earlier of Abraham Lincoln, February 12th. And that's why Negro History Week was the second week of February. Woodson, taking a page from a bit of fire, to use Joe Madison's metaphor. Mary McLeod Bethune Mary Church Terrell held on to her torch, but then lit a little bit of the torch of Carter Woodson. And so then you see Negro history work emerge. I can continue in the article Celine wrote. She says, Woodson is credited as the father of Black history, according to the Association for the Study of Afro-American Life and History. He died of a heart attack in 1950. But even after his death, community members demanded a continuation of the celebration he created. Black History Month really took off in the 1960s during the Black Power movement, said Carr. Students on college campuses such as Howard University, Tuskegee University of Alabama, and Kent State University in Ohio pushed for a more inclusive curriculum, complete with African American and global Black history and culture, he said. Quote, at HBCUs like Howard and Tuskegee, they wanted the entire university to reorient itself around concepts of Black history and culture, end quote. He said that was the Black university concept. Quote, on white college campuses like Kent State, the students and some faculty administrators pushed for the celebration of Negro History Week not only to be elevated, but extended, end quote. That's what I did say. Shout out to Ed Crosby. Shout out to Linus Hoskins. Kwame Nantambu is the name that he changed his name. That Black Studies cohort at Kent State University, a stone's throw from where Dr. Yvonne Sion lives, and of course her son is there, who Dave Chappelle, all these folks, Larry Crow was my point of entry to having that conversation in Southern Ohio. But Kent State plays a very important role in that. She goes on to write, Celine Martin, that on the Kent State University campus, a student-led organization called Black United Students, BUS, pushed to extend the entire month of February to celebrate Black history. The first observance of Black History Month took place at the university in 1970, according to Kent State University. The school eventually became known as the birthplace of Black History Month. President Gerald R. Ford, oatmeal man, as Gil Scott Heron would call him, recognized Black History Month on February 10th, 1976, according to the National Archives. Now, what Celine and I did talk about, which I'm sure she couldn't get into the conversation, is that Kent State is in Ohio. And Larry Crow, if you in here, remind me, brother, because I was trying to fact check in my mind, and I still haven't gone back to look at it. But I think the annual meeting of the Association for the Study of Afro-American Life and History was in Cincinnati that year. I know this is around the time they struggled to change the name from the Association for the study of Negro life and history to Afro-American life and history. And there was real contention and battle and discussion around that. But also around this time, there was the elevation and extension of the week to a month. It came out of the Black spaces and ultimately was federally recognized, as Celine Martin writes, February 10th, 1976. A decade later, 1986, Ronald Reagan, excuse me for cursing, issued Proclamation 5443, recognizing National Black or African American History Month in 1986, wanting to ensure the full story of African American history. Woodson brought together scholars from all disciplines when he created a SALA, including historians, sociologists, political scientists, as well as those in the humanities, according to Cassandra Newby Alexander, yes, my friend, founder of the Joseph Jenkins Roberts Center for African Diaspora Studies at Norfolk State University in Virginia. Behold the green and gold. Coco Nichols, Dr. Kalita Nichols Fairfax, my friend on the faculty there. And yes, Professor Newby Alexander is absolutely correct. I would say, in addition to that, that while all those people were convened in the association, the heart of the association were the people who hadn't gone to school, or the people who had gone to school but weren't working in the academy. People like school teachers and school children, people like, regular folks who were putting 5, 10 cents, $1, $2, getting the Black History Month kits, which began in the 1930s, curriculum stuff, all that stuff. Woodson grounded it in the community. Let me not go off. Let me continue to read this, because again, you can go into the archive, and I want to finish this because in the accretive fashion of in class, we are adding things we hadn't explored, like this article, which didn't exist the time yesterday, to things we have explored, which is this vast and growing living book, this archive. So let me continue with the remarks of Cassandra Newby Alexander, Professor Newby Alexander. She says, quote, they, textbooks, were referencing slavery and people who were enslaved as if they were servants and members of the family, highlighting mythical stories about how tied in Black people were to white people, end quote. She said, quote, he wanted to counter all that myth making so that the story of what really happened could be told and communicated to young people, end quote. Celine Martin goes on and says, in addition to proposing Negro History Week, Woodson also developed curriculum materials in the 1930s, Carr said, from Howard University. His organization would send kits to teachers to celebrate. The kits included pictures, lessons for teachers, plays for historical performances, and posters with notable dates and people, according to Harvard University. That's where a lot of stuff has been digitized. Harvard, Howard, don't matter. All on the periphery, jailbreaking the Black university. Let's be very clear about that. We continue. One student, and this is where I love Celine. Celine Martin, chef's kiss, sis. Because we talked about this and she got it in and she did the fact checking, extended it. So this is a nice little piece. In fact, on the Blackest Month, perhaps, everybody, as Black Thought might say in his performance of Thought versus everybody, every body. Take this article maybe as a point of departure. It's bite-sized, it's plainly written, it's well communicated. Give it to your high school students, give it to your elementary students, give it to the baby. Take the iPad out of his hand and put this article in, and when he struggles on a word, help him if he's 5 or 4 or 3. If you're teaching him how to read, maybe start with this. Oh, the Blackest. This could be the Blackest Month ever. She goes on and says, and here it is. She says, one student, Celine Martin writes, one student, Claudette Colvin. And she got a picture of Claudette Colvin in it. One student, Claudette Colvin, was enrolled in history classes at her high school, which later inspired her to make a life-altering decision, said Carr. And I am sick, even as I was standing at the grave of John Henry Clark on Sunday afternoon in Columbus, Georgia, at the Green Acres Cemetery. I knew that my heart, part of it, wanted to be in Washington, D.C., where Fred Gray was. Fred Gray was here at the National Portrait Gallery on Saturday. If y'all were Sunday, one of y'all was there, please put it in, because I talked to his sons. I really wish I could have been there. But Fred Gray, of course, who was Claudette Colvin's lawyer. Oh, there's no time between generations. And Claudette Colvin's still with us. Let me go back to the article. Celine Martin writes, on March the 2nd, 1955, Colvin was just 15 years old and enrolled at Booker T. Washington High School in Montgomery, Alabama. There's a lot of, I'm going to footnote this and keep going. On Saturday, shout out to my man, Dr. Larry Miles, who is a history teacher in Atlanta at the KIPP college prep school in Atlanta. Not just power program, right? But he brought maybe 4 or 5 of his students, young sisters, and one brother who appeared. He recorded his presentation, and they presented at the Southern Region Conference of the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations. Our regional president, of course, Reba Kelsey, ran the day from beginning to end. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when I come back. Dr. Hood, of course, Aleem Hood, there in Columbus, Georgia, member of the association. The principals of both George Washington Carver and Spencer High School in Atlanta, in Columbus, Georgia, were there. That's where Dr. Clark went to high school. And that's why I'm wearing this hoodie. My friend, Sister Rosa Patterson, Principal Rosa Patterson, whose son actually is a Howard University student. She brought me this hoodie because my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, my brother, you say in-law or in love, that's my brother, Randy Fuller, graduated from Spencer. 2 of my cousins graduated from Carver High School. Their house is right down the street from Carver High School. So Jeanette Davis and Frankie Lane Davis, both there. She was in the 3rd graduating class at Carver, and he was in the 6th graduating class. I saw their pictures on the wall there in the high school after we got off on last Saturday. But at any rate, so they were there. But these high school students that Larry brought, that Miles brought, Dr. Miles brought, he's teaching, by the way, the Advanced Placement African American Studies course there at KIPP Atlanta. Oh, by the way, KIPP Atlanta Collegiate. Some of y'all may be students there, may have people who are students there. By the way, remember when that was the biggest story, the AP African American Studies class? What happened? Oh, the flash is gone. Black History Month a couple years ago, debuted it at the National Museum. I was down there. It's a beautiful thing. Guess what? Everything comes and goes, whether it be Hillman Talk or the AP course fights. Guess what? But the work goes on. These young students came there and stood there, and this one young sister stood up, and I told her, oh, you need to copyright this. I'm going, got me? I'm going to, I couldn't see you. I was looking at the article, Rob. I'm going to suggest, I'm going to quote you on this. I'm going to give you for attribution. I was looking for my note cards. I couldn't find them. She got up and said, we asked her, where are you applying to college? There's a bunch of people. There's about 200 people who attended. If y'all were there, y'all know a little over half, maybe over a little bit, about 130 of those people were online. It was get it hybrid. This everybody got to do that now. And we were also in person. So all these people came. It's a beautiful thing. People came from all over. Dr. Travis Armstrong traveled. By the way, he's speaking today in San Antonio. As you all heard in office hours, I mentioned that on Monday night. He's got his first keynote speech starting Black History Month there in Texas. I'll say more about that at the end. And so everybody was there, as I said, as you said, Prof. Akio Parker, our mathematician who's created a whole field called hystematics, history and mathematics together. He was there. It was everybody. My man, Sam Livingston, who came down. I mentioned Congo earlier. He's doing a lot of work with Friends of the Congo, even as Rwanda invades Eastern Congo and the M23s approach Goma and are displacing people. More people have been killed in Congo by several times over than in Gaza. And over the last decade, you're talking about 6 million people have lost their lives in Congo. This is what allows these cell phones and these damn iPads and computers to work. Those minerals getting dug out the ground. While we talking about pronouns and whether or not you can celebrate African American History Month at the damn Pentagon, the real thieves, Elon Musk, all of them are positioning because it ain't about none of that stuff. It is for Stephen Miller, you cretin, but it's about, more importantly for them, profit. So anyway, Sam Livingston and his companion and sister, the good sister, Corey Claiborne, both of them professors at Morehouse, came down. Sam gave a very moving tribute at the grave of John Clark, while his 2 living niece and nephew were there with us, and they spoke as well. And I poured a libation. It's a beautiful thing. Reba Kelsey spoke. Mario Beatty, of course, made comments. And as we were standing there, I was reminded, listening to Dr. Kelsey, who went to Booker T. Washington High School in Atlanta, of the importance of African American, what we call Black History Month. Now, Woodson was putting out curriculum, and these school teachers and students were developing their own curriculum. And the power of it wasn't because we was, as Du Bois would say in the Journal of Negro Education a few years later, using our children as a battering ram, trying to get them into white schools, which was never our dream or objective. Not talking about you petty bourgeois Negroes who wanted to get over there, who wanted to do it with your whole heart, who still want it with your whole heart. I'm talking about the rest of us who don't give a damn. We see each other and we are enough. We are not only sufficient, we are the parents of everyone who will ever walk this ball. When Mariba Kelsey was at Booker T. Washington High School in Atlanta, when Claudette Colvin was in Booker T. Washington High School in Montgomery, Alabama, the Black history that they were learning there was required. AP history course, the first time, and it ain't the first time, fool. Philadelphia curriculum, the first time, it ain't the first time, fool. Go back to the apartheid era schools that Africans ran with African children, African principals, African faculty, and African community, and they required, many of them, Black history in the school. This child stood up a week ago today, one of Larry Miles' students. We asked her, where you going to school? She said, I'm going to the real HU. There's a lot of Howard graduates there. Principal Patterson is a graduate of Howard. So, they loving it. And she said, Hampton. They was like, boo. Now, I don't have a dog in that fight. Y'all know my philosophy. There's only one HBCU with many different locations. And as I get a little older and think about where we're going to put this archive and get things together physically, I just feel drawn to the South. I don't know whether it's maybe around Tuskegee or Atlanta University Center. All right, Omotoshio, y'all got room? Because this. Anyway, the point is this. So I'm sitting there, we all sitting there, they booing and cheering, I'm laughing. And then she said, but I am thinking about these historically Black high schools, historically Black colleges. And then she went on to talk about historically Black colleges for a minute. And when I got up at the end to kind of give the closing presentation before Dr. Kelsey gave the closing remarks and we adjourned for the evening that Saturday night, I referred to her, I said, I am going to quote you now for attribution because you said it so quickly that you saw that perhaps as a misspeak, but I love the concept you just birthed, sis. We talk about HBCUs. Now, I'm telling y'all right now, I put this on my to-do list, and I got a to-do list that's like so long, but this one, I'm bumping toward the top. So everybody get your mind right now. And this is the first day of the Blackest History Month, potentially. I want everybody to hear this very carefully. We talk about HBCUs, but more of our students, many more of our students, many. Lauryn Hill, Natalie Cole, Whitney Houston won Grammys for Album of the Year, and now people are wondering whether Beyonce is going to win one this weekend. All right, now y'all going to chase that football till one day maybe Lucy keeps it down there. Anyway, the point, many more students than go to HBCUs, go to HBHSs, historically Black high schools. That child, what was a misspeak was actually a revelation. I want us to pull together, Professor Hunter, I'm saying this first out of my mouth here to you and to everybody, but I know that between the two of us and the team, we can put this together as we plan to go some places this summer. To add some places to the places we always go, like Martin Delaney and places like, and to firm those places up differently. I want to put together a squad. Just before COVID, I was telling the Howard students, we're going to get a bus and we're going to go through. I'm going to get some Howard students. I'm going to get some students from Dunbar. We're going to go through the South. We're going to stop places. Okay, now HBCUs, sure, that's nice. Important, we'll do it. Yes, but HBHSs, you know how many Dunbars there are in this country? How many Booker T. Washingtons there are in this country? How many Bethunes there are in this country? Let's get the schools that they might not even be Black anymore, but they used to be when they were segregated and there's still Black students there. Let's put together an HBHS squad. Oh, the HBHS squad. I want a Carver shirt with all the Carvers. I want a Washington shirt with all the Washingtons. I want a Tubman shirt with all the I want the high schools named for Black people and the ones that were great back in the day who you tried to destroy an integration by wiping out the teaching. We're going to bring it all back, baby. We're going to roll over you like to see. Who cares whether they're going to have Black History Month celebration at the Department of Commerce? We're going to remember how Woodson established and those teachers and students spread it. And we will revive that. Oh, by the time and guess what? There are HBHSs in Africa and the Caribbean and Latin America. Oh, you have awakened the sleeping giant. Let me continue as I bring this to a close this moment in terms of the history of Woodson and Carr G. Woodson's and Black History Month. And we'll talk back now to Celine Martin. She says on March 2nd, 1955, Calvin was just 15 years old and enrolled at HBHS, Booker T. Washington High School in Montgomery, Alabama. Luther Porter Jackson, I see you over there. That's nice. He says, Celine writes, I'm sorry, let me do it again. And I'll do it without interruption. On March the 2nd, 1955, Calvin was just 15 years old and enrolled at Booker T. Washington High School in Montgomery, Alabama, reported the Montgomery Advertiser. a part of the USA Today network. She was riding a bus when some white passengers boarded. By law, she was required to sit at the back of the bus while white people sat at the front. The two racial divides were separated by a section called No Man's Land, in which Colvin and 3 other black passengers sat. The white bus driver told the black passengers to get up so the white people who just boarded could sit down. Although 3 riders moved to the back of the bus, Colvin stayed in her seat. Now you can ask, why are we talking about Colvin? Would that be an interesting black fact that they may put at the Black History Month program they're not going to have now at the Department of Agriculture or Housing and Urban Development? They're certainly not going to have at HHS, where the brain-addled Robert Kennedy Jr. will be busy trying to take vaccines away from children, or perhaps they won't have one certainly at intelligence agency where Tulsi Gabbard will be too busy pamping out the information to people outside the United States. So would that be an interesting fact maybe about Colette Colvin? Let's continue and see what Celine Martin writes after being in conversation with me. She says, quote, I felt as though Harriet Tubman was pushing me down on one shoulder and Sojourner Truth was pushing me down on the other, end quote. She previously said, quote, this is Colette Colvin, the beautiful picture of her later on, 2 pictures of her in the article. Quote, so therefore, history had me glued to the seat. That was the reason I could not move, end quote. Colvin was eventually taken to jail and charged with disorderly conduct, assault, and violating segregation laws. Activists protested, but she was found guilty at her first trial. On appeal, the judge dismissed the segregation and disorderly conduct, assault, and violating segregation laws. Activists protested, but she was found guilty at her first trial. On appeal, the judge dismissed the segregation and disorderly conduct charges, leaving the assault charge on her record. She was sentenced to indefinite probation until 2021, nearly 67 years after her 1955 arrest. A Montgomery juvenile court judge expunged her record. Why is she there? Because as Claudette Colvin talks about, and I'm looking at the book over there on the shelf, we talked about that. Go search Claudette Colvin in our searchable database because the archive has now been created as a living book. She talked about the fact that she was in a Negro history class at Booker T. Washington High School. Oh, so she said, when I was on that bus, I felt like I had Harriet Tubman on one shoulder, Sojourner Truth on the other. Where did you learn about that? You from Montgomery, Alabama. I learned about it in school because we had it in school. You think they can wipe our classes out? Of course, these hillbillies, the hillbilly horde, the white nationalists, gonna try to pass a law and say you can't teach that stuff at any K-12 school, and we're gonna come after the HBCUs after we get y'all to self-check yourselves like these scary ass white schools and drop all your diversity offices and get rid of your staff and not have your programs. But guess what? How you gonna check in class, baby? Come on. Let's dance. Oh, your feet fell off. Wait, no. Oh, you're gone. Oh, you have evaporated as a concept. We will roll over you like to see you wayward children. Let me finish. Celine Martin writes, the Negro History Bulletin was a newsletter published by Woodson's organization, ASALH. In March 1950, Woodson posthumously published an article describing how community members can celebrate Negro History Week. Carr said, that's what we're going. In his article, Woodson wrote, it's oftentimes speakers invited to connect with students during Negro History Week have, quote, traditional discussions of the race problem and how it can be or has been or can be solved. But that's not all there is to discuss, he said. Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about that. The last thing, in fact, let me just do that. Let me just pull up now from the lesson. If you go to the website that I have, drgregcarr.com, you can see the lesson. In that, in fact, let me see if this young lady, it's got a hot link on it. Let me see. Did she put a hot link on this USA Today article? Let me see. I can't get it to, oh wait, here it is. It's coming up. Is it coming up? Let me see. It is coming up, but it's taking forever to load. Okay. Yeah, there it is. She got it. Excellent. She pulled it literally out of the Negro History Bulletin. Beautiful job, Celine. So you get the article, you can hit the hot link, and it doesn't even go to my lesson, which is great. It goes to the Negro History Bulletin, which is online. And you can read in the Negro History Bulletin. You can read it in the lesson that I did too, but you can read it here. This is the last op-ed that Woodson wrote before he made transition. No study and consequently no celebration. We've talked about this many times. I'm just going to read the first part because I think it has salient today as we talk about anti-racism. Woodson wasn't he wasn't about anti-racist. It's not about questioning how to be an anti-racist or moving anti-racist. No. Race is not centered. In fact, let's let Woodson speak for himself. This is what Carter Woodson says. He says, it is evident from the numerous calls for orators during Negro History Week that schools and their administrators do not take the study of the Negro seriously enough to use Negro History Week as a short period for demonstrating what the students have learned in their study of the Negro during the whole school year. Watch this. This is what Woodson, I'm quoting Woodson now. Next thing you're going to hear is come from Carr G. Woodson. Quote, these mischievous orators, as it has been said again and again in these columns, have no message which they can connect with the celebration of Negro History Week. About the only thing on the Negro which they know is the traditional discussion of the race and how it has been or can be solved. Ouch. Let's continue, CG. Dr. Woodson. Woodson writes, such orators therefore introduce the undeveloped youth to the problems, he writes, of strife, which in their immaturity they cannot easily understand. Such foreign exercises should give place to simple presentations of those deeds of the Negro, and I would say beginning at the beginning of time, which Woodson would say too, which will inspire the youth toward emulating the examples of those who achieved in spite of tremendous handicaps. Race ain't the framework, friend. So how to be an anti-racist ain't the framework either. How to be human in the world with your long memory is the frame. In fact, let me stop. Let me go back to Woodson. At the end of the paragraph, he says, those with ambitions in the present will thus gain renewed vigor in their efforts to battle with present-day obstacles and finally overcome in the struggle of life. Almost every person who has attained distinction in some useful field owes his, her, their success in a measure to having had presented to them from time to time the records of great people of his country. Great inspiration comes from biographical sketches and narratives of people who advanced successfully measures which marked epochs in human progress. You see what he did there? You see what Woodson did there? He says you got to go through epochs of human progress. You're not talking about the last 50 years, the last 100 years, the last 100 or 200 years. You're talking about the arc of existence. Let's end up the article. Last paragraph says this. We're going to end with Professor Newby Alexander in a second. Woodson viewed Negro History Week as an opportunity for people to share what they've learned during the other 11 months of the year, Carr said. Newby Alexander said that in some cases, Negro History Week marked the start of discussions on how communities were celebrating throughout the year. If you had a principal who was really involved in this, there were all kinds of images and things going on every week or every month that highlighted Black heroes, historically Black junior high schools, middle schools, historically Black elementary schools. Let's get busy. I love it. I love it. I love it. That had lessons, she goes on to say, talking about them. Events in American history, I would add world history, that were inclusive of Black people, she said. Quote, this was unheard of in most of the school systems that were not Black. This was unheard of in most of the school systems that were not Black. Oh, one more time. This was unheard of in most of these school systems that were not Black. You puffer fish clown governor of Florida. Governor of Texas, who I guess if Trump and them have their way, you would be out of a job because you, sir, use a wheelchair to get around. And apparently they're against those people too. The clown governor of Tennessee, Mississippi, and Louisiana. You can't ban us. We gave birth to you, you wayward children. And if you think we're going to get caught up arguing with you about our humanity and yours, you don't have the momentum of memory. We're regaining it in this, the Blackest History Month. Professor Newby Alexander said this was unheard of in most of the school systems that were not Black. Now, you have successfully destroyed most of our teacher pipeline. As Du Bois said in Journal of Negro Education, they're going to use our children as battering rams, then they're going to get rid of our children's teachers. They successfully did that, but guess what? We got teachers, the teachers come in all shapes, forms. They didn't take the praxis, but I'm your grandmother. They didn't take the praxis, but I am the person who will remind you, as we were reminded yesterday morning when we heard not only about what we were reminded by Sister Cheryl, who called from Georgia to raise the name of Denasia Brown Elder, another premature ancestor who lost her life in the tragedy here in Washington, D.C. There are many ways to teach, many ways to teach. Finally, in an earlier writing in 1943, Woodson himself wrote that what we need is not a history of selected races or nations, but the history of the world void of national bias, race hate, and religious prejudice. As I said, we should emphasize not Negro history, but the Negro in history he wrote. Celine Martin, reporter, USA Today's Now Teen. She's from Norfolk, Virginia, the 757. Y'all want to give her some love, you can email her at sdmartin, MARTIN, at usatoday.com. Give that sister some love. She did a hell of a job there. Brian Lyman, Lyman, also contributed to the article, writing from the Montgomery Advertiser in Alabama. I'm raising that because there are many ways to do this work, friends. Many ways to do this work, fam. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And so, yeah, that is who I was mentioning. So let's kind of bring this thing to port, because we've talked a lot about Woodson, but I want to kind of raise what Woodson would have us do. So as I said, the in-class sessions are there. Carter reads the newspaper, 93, 180, session 1, also session 44 on John Hope Franklin, session 49. Those of you who don't try to write this down. That's why we got to record it. That's why we're streaming it. Lessons in Africana Studies, 152 and 153. We talk about a lot of the books, the African background outline. Number 44 is a good one to kind of start with. Also 99. Education of the Negro prior to 1861, sessions 20 and 60. Emphasized there. The Miseducation of the Negro. We read The Miseducation of the Negro in Nubia, went through it page by page for several weeks. So I'm just going to read these numbers quickly and just so you can get a flavor for where we clustered the discussions and where we were reading. About 2 years in class, a year into Nubia, we did The Miseducation of the Negro. Listen to how many times we focused on this in class, and you can go into the archive. You can pause this later. Take a breath. Here we go. 26, 27, 38, 49, 52, 74, 93, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 123, 124, 127, 135, 136, 150, 152, 153, 154, 160, 166, 169, 176, 180, 193, 197, 204, and counting, including now 266. The point is this. TikTok, Hillman U, great point of entry. Now, take those numbers down, and you can go to class, you see. And then you can talk about it on TikTok. Important. Now, my recollections of veterans of the Civil War, one of my favorite pieces that Woodson wrote, sessions 86, 144, 176, and 182, also 138, 166, and 204. Two books that I will mention that I did pull out because I love these books, and they are mouth-to-ear testimony, and I do keep these out of storage. These are the books. These are journals by the late Lorenzo Johnson Green. Working with Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black history. This is the diary, the journal that Lorenzo Green, one of Woodson's boys, kept. Arvaz Strickland wrote the introduction, and the great Charles Harris Wesley actually was alive and wrote the foreword. The second volume, this is about how Woodson moved through the world, and I still kept a little Strand price. I paid $15 for this at the Strand bookstore many, many years ago. Selling Black History for Carter G. Woodson, a diary, 1930 to 1933, the second volume by Lorenzo Green. But the reason I hold this up is because Augie Meyer had made transition. As I've told you all before, you go in the archive, you can see where I talked about this extensively. I'm not going to do it today, but I'll show you this page. This was signed by Arvaz Strickland, January 21st, February 21st, 1997, Black History Month, 1997. Augie Meyer, I guess after he made transition, his family or whoever basically de-accessioned a bunch of his books, and they had a lot of autograph books like this that were signed to Augie Meyer, one of the major historians of African American history, although he himself was European. You read his book, A White Scholar in the Black Community, by the time he spent at Tougaloo in Mississippi, you can learn more about him. But those two pieces are very important pieces, and we've talked about them. You look again at session 44, also 183. You can look at both of those. We talk more about them. So, as the world races toward reshaping, I'm going to do a quick round through our conceptual categories before I look at what Woodson would have us do. On this first day of Black History Month, as the feds are canceling these federal programs, today's session, consider today, February 1st, as a one-stop moment for everybody who had something canceled. Just play this. Just play this. It's a nice beginning. The Blackest History Month, perhaps. Discuss that. Pull together some people, barbershop, beauty parlor, wherever, church. Let's have a conversation. Could we, should we, will we make this the Blackest History Month ever? Remember, every month is Black History Month. February should be the blackest. Conceptually, if we're doing the work we need to be doing, what can we do now? Not only to push back, but that we ain't talking about being an anti-racist. We talking about being pro-African and globally expanding. What are the conversations we can have, and how do we build the momentum of memory, and how do we use the things that we can study to propel us forward communally? Consider this one as a one-stop shop. And in a minute, we're going to hear from Woodson telling us what we should do in February. This is in the social structure. These airplane crash tragedies, all these people who lost their lives, including my soon-to-be colleague, Kia Duggins, who was coming to D.C. to come on over to West Campus at the Howard University School of Law to start teaching. I never met Kia Duggins physically, but now she's an ancestor, and we can all talk to her, a premature ancestor who was coming to this city to teach. As you said, Professor Hunter. And Denasia Brown Elder. Denasia Brown Elder, who was just finishing her shift as a flight attendant on that plane. So we're not going to get caught up while a model brain wayward child vomits about DEI. Because as I said yesterday on the air, every time we go to Kemet, every pilot we have is not white. Almost all Arab. Every once in a while, you might get Nubian. And I remember when, Mario, you'll remember this, Valethia, everybody who was with us 2 years ago, the flags, Baba Flag, all of y'all, you know, my sister, Makeda Kumasi. You remember when we were flying, I think it was the charter flight we had from Aswan to Abu Simbel. And we're all there. We in the back, and then we hear people start cheering. It's all us almost on the plane. I think it's all us. We chartered plane. You know, Mary Hanani and the people from Saudi travel first class. Everybody, you know, I think about all our people now, you know, all of our people. At any rate, we hear, I'm in the back here cheering. I'm getting up to the front, and I'm realizing everybody's stopping one at a time to take a picture. Why? The pilot is a sister. Peter Ducey and whoever this little child clown y'all got that was working for Huckabee, and then now she's the White House president. Anybody think about y'all wayward children? These people lost their lives, and you up here trying to find Black people to blame. Guess what? The fingers you're using to point we gave you. You're an afterthought, and your little world is coming to an end. That's why you're so mad. They are fighting yesterday's New York Times, actually Thursday's New York Times, under the headline, Migration is muddling the rules of citizenship. I'm not going to read from this much. Emma Bubola makes this point at the end. Says what? Some argue that the Trump administration is not setting out to modernize a law, the 14th Amendment, which, by the way, isn't completely settled. People say it can't revoke birthright citizenship. You were born here. Yeah, that's part one of it. And all you ADOS Negroes trying to argue about this, I'm gonna ask y'all to consider writing this title down, although I doubt you read it because you got another agenda you're after. This is called The Original Meaning of the 14th Amendment. It's a Letter in Spirit by Randy Barnett and Evan Bernick. I picked this up actually at a library sale that somebody from the Supreme Court Society had given this away. And I'm glad because I got to buy it cheaply. And it's a fascinating book. There are many books on the 14th Amendment. Those of you who want to talk more about it, let me know. Maybe we can talk about it in class one night because I probably got 24 books on the 14th Amendment. And that's a conservative estimate. But all these people saying it was meant for Black people. Yeah, that was the impetus in part. But it applies to everyone, friend, until it doesn't, because the second part of that clause that they're reading at the beginning of the 14th Amendment, that persons born here in the United States and subject to the jurisdictions thereof are citizens. These hillbillies going after the subjects of the jurisdiction thereof. They're trying to say that they want to move in some ways from birthright citizenship to bloodline citizenship. Get a book by one of our extended colleagues at Johns Hopkins, Dr. Martha Jones, who has written about birthright citizenship. Don't be trying to constrict the notion of citizenship, because guess what? 4 little words. You have children listening, have them cover their ears. 4, 3, 2. Your ass is next. All right, they can uncover because guess what? This is what she's writing on Thursday in the New York Times. Emma Bola, she says, some argue that the Trump administration is not setting out to modernize a law. That's what I just talked about. But instead is trying to redefine the nation itself. That's Stephen Miller and Stephen Bannon and their fevered white dream. It ain't about the law. It's about trying to redefine. I'll read you the one quote I want to read from this article. Quote, it rejects the idea of America as a nation of immigrants, said Hiroshi Montomura, an immigration and citizenship expert at the University of California, Los Angeles School of Law. The idea is this ain't a nation of immigrants. It's a white man's country, sounding like Andrew Johnson from Reconstruction. This is what they're talking about. But guess what? In that social structure moment, the world is racing toward reshaping. They are trying to preserve their identity. So the AIs are American descendants of slaves who are saying, it was for us. Yeah, it was the impetus, but it was for everybody. I'd get rid of citizenship altogether, but that's just me. Remember in office hours, we looked at how this notion of citizenship doesn't come out of Africa. The idea you got to have papers to be somewhere. The Egyptians don't have a word for it. At least not if I've seen. I got to consult with my brother as people are writing about that, Dr. Beatty. It's a serious question. In Europe, you see what Germany is doing. Their coalition is falling apart. Musk interfering in the election there and in England. They're trying to circle the wagons around whiteness. In Africa, the Congo is all up in conflict. They're propping up Paul Kagame because they want those minerals. Ooh, not Africans, Europeans, and others. The billionaire class wants that stuff. In the Caribbean and in Latin America, they postponed the meeting we're supposed to have this week of all the heads of state. They were going to get together. The sister from Honduras said, we need to get together and talk about what we're going to do. Then they postponed it. And in the United States, this dishonest ass press was like, oh, they bowed to Trump. They didn't bow to Trump. You think they don't have phones? You think they're not talking? Scheinbaum is like, what you want to do? Lula da Silva in Brazil is like, oh, we're behind you. We will stop. The man in Colombia said, we ain't going to do that. And then he sent his own jets to come get the citizens of Colombia back. And they saying he bowed to Trump. Do you know how much money y'all going to pay for stuff if they getting a tariff war? As Lamont and I joke about on the radio, tax yourself. Remember the Mac? Cut and stick yourself, Mr. Pretty Tony. Tax yourself, hillbilly horde. Except we're going to tax ourselves too. I buy books from everywhere. I was in a thrift store here in DC the other day. And when I go in there, I know all the people who work in there. You see nothing, not nothing, but many times you see a lot of immigrants, many from Spanish speaking communities. And I was in there the other day, and this sister, this kind of African sister who works there, who speaks Spanish, she's, very friendly sister. I said, where's everybody? She said, oh, they're scared to come to work. My God. My God, this is what we're talking about. This is a war where they're trying in the social structure to preserve themselves in a world that is reshaping, and where AI is now getting ready to restructure the game, and the Chinese didn't drop something low cost that's going to make everything crazy. And guess who is here for it? Oh, while you looking at people waving flags, guess who is like, yeah, we're going to seize that Chinese stuff. We're jumping on that because it'll lower our cost. That would be Tim Cook and Apple. Stop playing games like these flags represent teams and you on one or the other. The people who ain't got no team except money got one team. In the governance formation, we seem aroused right now, but we've seen this before. The social media frenzy, the TikTok, that's great. The long distance runners remind us to stay focused, as Joe Madison would tell us. What are you going to do about it? You got to keep it focused. The other day, Brother John, who called in yesterday to Sirius from Virginia, who said, I came here for another country, and I want to say that I'm always mindful of how Black people here suffered and struggled for the things that I enjoy today. And he said, sometimes I walk in a barbershop and I hear people talking and they say, my history doesn't matter, and I walk back out. It's difficult. It is hard. We're here week after week, day after day, every day. It is a gift and a blessing to be able to have the momentum of memory sustain us in that stamina to continue to work, because so many people don't have a space where they can feel some sense of hope, some sense of inspiration, some sense of a guide to begin to engage in that intellectual work that only each of us can do for ourselves. And that's why I say, use this as a one-stop shop here on February the 1st. Play this video everywhere. Share it everywhere. Argue with it, debate with it, argue against it, use it as the launch for the Blackest History Month yet. Brother Marcus Mason. Marcus called in yesterday and mentioned his brother, mentioned his father, who made it into his late 90s. Welcome Emerson Mason. Welcome Emerson Mason. His first name was Welcome. Thank you, Brother Marcus, because your daddy was the principal at Westside High School in Lincolnton, Georgia. Westside High School in Lincolnton, Georgia. Westside HBHS. And Marcus said, my daddy was the Joe Clark of my town. And remember, Joe Clark was at Ferry Side. Yeah, and your daddy was at Fair West Side, about halfway between Atlanta and Columbia, Atlanta, Georgia, Columbia, South Carolina. And he said that, Brother Marcus said his daddy in his will said, I want my residence to be converted into a Black History Museum. He said, I am a Nubian. You probably hear right now. Sister Karen, listen, the man said, you heard him. I am a Nubian. I'm here and I want y'all's help. Guess what? These people running around here caking 50 cakes of makeup on, sticking a cross on their chest, and at 27 years old, lying to everybody in the world from behind the White House podium. Somebody else striding in and all white, can't wait to get her hands on all the secrets to go tell the people who employ her. This other guy over here begging his way into whiteness, wants to get in charge of the FBI so he can destroy everything. And I don't know that that's necessarily a bad idea, or punish his enemies, which is always a bad idea. But we remember COINTELPRO, you clown. You think we haven't survived this before? While all that's going on, this man said to us, to the future, coming out of being the principal and guiding young minds for decades, told his son and family, I want this physical place to be a repository. Another iteration of Oliver Jones's parlor when Carter Woodson, the teenager, was reading the newspaper, even as my grandparents were being born in Alabama. Oh, don't play with us. You have nothing for us, you wayward children. Play this and have conversation about it. So, as I said last weekend in Columbus, Georgia, Phoenix City, Alabama, with family and community and everybody there, the remarks I gave, as I said last week, John Henry Clark versus everybody, Dr. Hood, Sister Kelsey, all of everybody, the principal at George Washington Carver High School, Chris Lindsay, beautiful brother. He let us in and let me set up in a classroom where I did in class last week. Just another down payment. We're going to do this. We're going to be on the road. We're going to be navigating with a K in these Nubia streets. And of course, Spencer High School's principal, Rosa Patterson. Thank you, sis. I had my Carver on last week. I got my Spencer on this week. We're going to do that. Yes. As again, Dr. Miles, very important. The statue of Samuel P. Charleston, the first principal at Carver. I went by there again before we left the building. The lessons that we have, because we were there for John Henry Clark. Pouring into a dead project is absurd. The American project is going to be remade or it's going to come apart. We see it before our eyes. We can absorb our traumas as temporary and instructional. So it's not about anti-racism. We're not going to absorb these traumas and try to turn them into something. We don't have a vision of what we're trying to do. Yes, we just want a better world. Well, no, that's just vague, man. Be in history. Be in long memory. We can absorb these temporary traumas as temporary and instructional if we have goals in mind, not rooted in perpetual corrosive fights to establish our beingness in the world. Woodson, when you read what he wrote, the African background outline, and I didn't pull a lot of Woodson things today. I just pulled a couple, and I wanted to, because I want to keep the history up of us doing work that is intellectual work. You'll have to go online for this. This is a physical copy of the Negro History Bulletin, Volume 4, 1940 and 1941. On page 3, this is the ed, the Negro in Foreign Lands, the feature for 1940 and 1941. The whole volume is on the Negro in Foreign Lands, meaning what? The global Black. We would call it something different. He's got his editorial says, why study Africa? This man came out the coal mines, West Virginia. This is for the descendants of slaves. Don't at me or at me. Let's talk. Come on in Monday night. I want to hear this argument. Why study Africa? Carr Woodson telling you in 1940. Why study Africa? He writes, it means nothing to the Negroes in other parts of the world. For, as some of us ignorantly say, the Negroes retain nothing that they brought from that continent. Others look upon Africa as the land of darkness and think of it only as a place where traders once hunted slaves. Those who have taught the Negroes in the United States have made them ashamed of their African beginnings. Even today, people try to ridicule Negroes by calling them Mandingos, Coromantes, Igbos, Congos, and Senegambians. But the Africans thus designated represent some of the noblest blood ever to course through human veins. Oh, you should read it. Maybe I'll scan it, Prof, and get Ahmad to put it up. Why study Africa? That's Woodson in 1940, friends. Bringing it in, bringing it in, bringing it in. Why Africana? Like Dr. Clark, who focused on many things. He loved that 19th century because we had not yet forgotten where we came from. Henry Highland Garnett, Bishop Henry Benil Turner, who said we have no future in this country. That's why we go to Martin Delaney every summer with Baba Larry and Mama Labisi. That's why we go. The momentum of memory. Why Africana? We take that from Carter Woodson. I'd rather be an African, absorbing all the stories of our genius and resilience into a longer arc of meaning and ultimately triumph over this system. When Woodson said Negro History Week is in February, I want to expand it ultimately so that we study world Africana. We got to have that. We're rejoining our ancestors who are in front of us, as Mario Beatty reminded us, instead of pouring all that memory into a truncated and endless feedback loop of being subversive and subservient to the idea of perpetual inadequacy. You ain't got to prove yourself. DEI, you know what DEI is? Whiteness. Whiteness is the DNI of the last half millennia, the last 500 years of human history. That is DEI. Diversity. Germans, Italians, French, Dutch, Spanish. Equity. All of y'all equally white, and inclusion in a project that would decenter everybody else's humanity. DEI is whiteness. Include yourself in a governance formation and watch how quickly the thing falls, especially when you overflow the fake lines that they drew between you, whether you be Tutsis in Congo and Rwanda, or Africans in the United States and not Cuba, or Africans in London and not Lagos. Erase those lines. Join that. The Black History Month that we're talking about must be global. Science and technology, we use the TikTok University as a point of entry. We could do that. We're using this as a point of entry right now. Thinking things through, however, clarity of thought, however, comes from contemplation and context, not smart, quick, hot takes, hot takes, hot takes. Cultural meaning making. We cannot mistake agitation for excellence. This week the Grammys, next week the Super Bowl. People were like, they not like us. They not like us. I'm sitting like, who is they and who is us? I'm watching your billionaire spectacle with some Negroes dancing. Guess what? That's cultural meaning making. That's fine. Even as you see backlash against Negroes that won't build the momentum of memory. Snoop, do we feel bad for you? Not me. Bruh, get your weight up. But that cultural meaning making, that temporary moment, don't mistake that for the extended contemplation of the last conceptual category, movement and memory. We must regain that momentum of memory. The blueprint for this month, we end with this, is Carter Woodson. Carter Woodson's instructions for Black History Month. And let me see here, because I had it pulled up, and I think, unfortunately, that I let it go. So let me pull it up again just quickly. And Dr. Greg Carr. I done said my name more times today than I have probably in the last 5 years. And that's weird to me. But at this moment, we got Hillman University loose in the streets. So I guess it requires a little bit more specific focus. And that's fine. Point of entry is very important. Here we are. This is what Carr G. Woodson says. It's in the lesson if you download it. This is what Woodson writes under Activities for Negro History Week. This is what Celine and I talked about a lot. This is what he said. All right, y'all ready? Here we go. We're ending with this today. Then I'm going to sit somewhere and drink another cup of coffee and then get ready to go see Gerald Horn tonight at 6. Go see my man, get this last book signed. In fact, I think I pulled it out for y'all to see. This is his latest book. Wait a minute. Did I have it here? Did I have it here? Oh, man, I thought I had it. Y'all know how I am now. Yeah, I get this OCD, and I'm going to keep rooting around until I see it. And there it is right there. African Americans, A New History of the United States of America. As I talked about last week, he's going to be talking about this one, and also Armed Struggle, the one right before that. So here we are. And Travis Armstrong today got a keynote there in San Antonio. Drop that in the chat, Baba, so everybody can see. If they get a chance around there, I want you to come through and support him. Good work. Here are the activities for Negro History Week that Carter Woodson said would be good to do. Now listen very carefully and then see which ones you can apply. Activities for Negro History Week. He says Negro History Week begins February 7th, 1943. This is 1943 he's writing. So that would be 43, 53, 63, 73, 83, 93, 03, 13, 23. 72 years ago. 72 years ago. Anybody here older than 72? He was writing while you were alive. Anybody after that? You know somebody who was alive then. These things are very, very brief in terms of time. Negro History Week begins February 7th, 1943. This is the week set aside by the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History for the purpose of emphasizing what has already been learned about the Negro during the year. Every month is Black History Month. February, the blackest. Maybe we should start calling it Blackest History Month. Allow the pupils to participate fully in these exercises by simplifying them in order to put everything within their reach. Did he talk to you, Professor Hunter, before he wrote this? Simplifying them in order to put everything within their reach. The suggestions offered below indicate a few ways to make Negro Week count. In 2025, a few ways to make Blackest History Month count. Here they go. Which ones can you do? Can we do? Number one, arrange with your local broadcasting station for a program of a period of 15 to 30 or 45 minutes to inform the public on the achievements of the Negro. He did not have Karen Hunter. Is awesome. But the way I understand it, Prof, you are already going to put number one in action. Arrange with your local podcast for a program. So number one, we getting that covered. Everybody else follow suit. Follow Karen Hunter is awesome, who has said the whole month devoted to Negro history, to African history, to African world history. Number two, secure the cooperation of your local newspaper. Celine Martin, my new sister, secure the cooperation of your local newspaper and have it run a series of articles presenting unusual facts about the progress of the Negro. Brother Al, Nubian in Minnesota. We got a lot of newspaper publishers, writers, and people who contribute. Websites. Number two, easier now than when Woodson wrote it. Number three, invite to your school some aged person and have him, her, them give the pupils the story of their experiences during slavery, after emancipation, in the World War, and the like. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, you ain't going to find nobody who went through captivity, but I promise you, there are some people out there, some elders who knew people who did. You invite me, I'll tell you about Thomas Hayes Sr. and Gussie Williams Hayes, who did not go through captivity, but whose parents and families did. And how my granddaddy was my first drug dealer. But don't invite me. Go find the elders in your family. Have your grandmama come up. And when they tell you, can't do no higher, that's my grandmother. You really want to awaken the hood and say my grandma can't come here in February and talk about her life? Oh, you don't want to dance with that, baby. Oh, you don't want to dance with that. Now, while I'm whipping your ass, tomorrow we will actually have this conversation at the community center. But today, I'm telling everybody in the hood who usually don't come to school to come on up here, or as we say, up to the school and dance with the principal. Y'all don't know what y'all just did. Carter Woodson's inviting you to do that. And number four, have each pupil write their family history. Oh, you can't stop nobody from writing their family history. Is that diversity, equity, inclusion? Hey, Don, let's start with you. Talk about your older brother. Do you want to talk? Wasn't he a pilot or something? And drank something? Why don't you talk about your niece Mary? She good for telling y'all family history. Well, guess what? We're gonna ignore your brain-addled ass. We're gonna ask ourselves. Carter Woodson, number four, says, have each pupil write their family history, where they live today, where their parents and grandparents lived, why they moved elsewhere, why they moved elsewhere, what they were doing at that time, and what they are doing today. I asked Celine at the end after we finished the interview, I said, where you from, sis? She said, Norfolk. I said, oh, the 757, oh, behold the green and gold. She said, I didn't go to Norfolk State, but my mama did. And my grandma talked about, she started talking about how her grandmother worked in the shipyard in Virginia. That's that largest deep water port, deepest water port on the eastern seaboard is Norfolk. And she started talking about that. She called to interview me, but I want to know about your family history. Number four, have each pupil write their family history, where they live today, where their parents and grandparents live, why they moved elsewhere, and what they were doing at the time and what they are doing today. Number five, have your club, society, school, Facebook group, TikTok community, followers, whatever. Write the history of your community giving each writer a separate and distinct topic like the churches, the schools, the business leaders, and professional men. Watch Mariba Kelsey when he moved back to Atlanta after having spent decades, he and his wife, in Columbus, Ohio, where she's from, write the history of his neighborhood, the Pittsburgh community of Georgia, of Atlanta, the churches of Pittsburgh. Did a survey he did. Come on now, because we're going to keep this community, build this community, extend this community, but many in this community don't know the history. I grew up here. He'll be 100 in June. Dr. Kelsey said we got to have African War for Peace, internal and then external. Part of it is documenting ourselves. And Woodson say, I'm with you, brother. 1943. Dr. Kelsey by then was in the service. He went to Booker T. Washington High School. Guess who else did? As I told you all, he was in high school with Martin Luther King. And guess what? They had to take African American history, Black history, Negro history. All right, let me wrap this up, because I can't see you now. Probably I moved over here so I could see the all right, here we go. So I could read the thing. It says invite the local ministers to participate freely in the celebration of Negro History Week and ask them to mention in their sermons on the 7th of February the important achievements of the Negro. A lot of Black preachers already lied to do that. This is the one time a year where everybody wear African clothes to church. Everybody can't be like Trinity United Church of Christ, Reverend Dr. Wright, but they will wear African clothes on February, the Blackest month. Have your club, society, or school write the history of your community, giving each writer a topic. I said that one. That's number 5. Number 6, I just said invite the ministers. Number 7, post on your bulletin boards or your social media clippings of authentic information about the Negro published in newspapers and magazines of standing. Number 8, invite a returned missionary. This is interesting. Who may have brought back from Africa pieces of artwork. So he's not inviting them to talk about the missionary work. He says, ask this missionary and other persons to explain and give such works to your school, and thus start an art collection. See, y'all playing. Woodson didn't have the technology to do 3D printing, so that you ain't got to invite somebody to come back from Africa, decide what you want, print it, and then study as you're printing before you decide to print what you want to print and why, and demystify masks. Demystify masks. I'm just pointing to stuff y'all can't see. Demystify those things, because guess what? This fool vomiting from the White House podium and from behind the desk in the Oval Office talking about he want to bring back beautiful architecture. What you're calling beautiful is because you think it's Greek. You don't know that the Greeks got it from the Egyptians. You want to dance with us, baby? Your feet fall off, you wayward child. Number 9, ask your local library to make an exhibit of all the books bearing on the Negro. If such books are in circulation, make a list showing the number of books available for informing the public on the Negro. We got the whole list of Black bookstores in Knarrative and Nubia. If you order the books from the library, we scared. Okay, get the books yourself and set up your own library. We heard it's going to be one in Lincolnton, Georgia. And there are already many around the country. Number 10, have your art class make a frieze for your room, painting, showing in action African workers in gold, in iron, in wood, in leather, and in ivory, with some animals in the background. Okay, well, I got to do it Africa. Why don't we do it here? Guess what? We've been working with animals and stuff a long time. Why don't you have some kind of Africans on there? Get some Africans from the plantations on there. Get some Africans from the Caribbean with sugar cane cutting it on there. Get everybody on the Black worker. I think that's the theme this year, actually, for Negro History Week, or the Blacks in Business, Negro History Month. I had to look. But my point is this. Artists, it's time to bring us together. We've been working everywhere. Pufferfish, governor of Florida. People learned some skills in slavery. Let me tell you something. We built the house that you was sitting in there saying that crazy shit about. And guess what? Not now, because all the people you want to put out the country, they not building your house anymore. What's going to happen to the housing market in Florida anyway? Number 11. Drop a list of 50 or more important but simple questions on the past of the Negro. This is for the people who are critical. Why don't y'all, instead of criticism, put the questions in? Drop a list of 50 or more important but simple questions on the past of the Negro. Arrange for the answers by multiple choice, true and false, completion sentences, and questions that ask where, who, when, and why. Number 12. Make a chart of unusual facts which have been taught and learned, and list them under, do you know that? Professor Hunter, I think y'all was talking. You must have been talking to ancestor. When maybe he came to you in a dream, you should know. He's saying, do you know that? And then he had a blank there. There are only 15. Here's the 13th. Have your pupils, number 13, have your pupils or members of your society record in notebooks the sketches of the lives of 40 or more Negroes, giving in each case date of birth, childhood, education, early efforts and achievements of worth, which each sketch should be a picture. Watch this. We ain't talking about going and looking stuff up and tweeting stuff or posting stuff or TikTok and doing a little bit. No, get young people and make it with your hands. Go look it up and make it into little note cards. Make it in, maybe even create a little business. I would damn sure support that. And y'all know how I am. If I get it, I'm going to show everybody. The whole point is this. Look at that. Blackest, oh my God, what are we talking? Small Business Administration canceled the Black History Month proposal. Yeah, and guess what? These little 7-year-olds at this HBESH, Historically Black Elementary School, then made a series of postcards and they do little illustrations. And somebody looked up the stuff, and here's Mary McLeod Bethune, and here's Mary McCabe, and here's Shaka Zulu, and here is Nanny Queen of the Maroons, and here is Sojourner Truth, here's Carr G. Woodson, here's my grandma, here's my Uncle Joe, here is my pop. And then we had an online conversation globally where select members of this global historically Black bunch of children start talking with each other about what they did. And then they put up a website for the stuff to be sold. Number 14. Divide your school into sections and present the story of the Negro in the important fields of achievement such as law, science, engineering, invention, music, architecture, painting, education, business, religion, drama, and fiction. This is Carter Woodson, number 15, finally. Require each member of the class to learn from memory one poem by a Negro author. Prada blouse, Gucci bra, Filthmore jeans, take that off. Give it to me. Give it that stuff. That's a poem. No. H to the Izzo. That's a poem. No. No. They not like, okay, you can memorize. Very good. Require each member of the class to learn from memory one poem by a Negro author. For example, Woodson writes, To Our Boys by Underhill, Self-Determination by Hill, If We Must Die by McKay, Ode to Ethiopia by Dunbar, and 50 Years by James Weldon Johnson. 15 suggestions on the first day of Blackest History Month, potentially, from Carter Woodson to get us started. Don't let these fools pull us off our square.
Yes. Point of you mentioned that we have a book directory. It's about 300 Black-owned bookstores that you can access by being in Knarrative with a K, narrative.com. You go to the resource section, the bookstore, the directory is there. There's 300 plus, separated by location. So you can find a bookstore that you can physically go to in your area. There's also a bookshelf. I've asked Ahmad to put the piece that the young lady from USA Today did.
Excellent. Thank you.
And the piece from Carter G. Woodson from the Negro Digest. And maybe, when you scan that, the one that you held up, we could put that there as well. So, we're building. And as you mentioned, we have a whole bibliography that you can access as well. And, go through and study and type in, what you want to know, and it'll show you where to go in class. And we're also working on AI so that we can have our own internal searching that pulls from only us. So we're working at Knarrative, and I'm very, very happy. We're of course on YouTube as well. But if you come into Nubia, many courses are going to be offered this year. We're planning to add new courses, including one. Hope Cat Adams comes in and teaches how we do interview our elders and create our own narratives for our history, our family history. That I think is super important. So I'm so grateful that we have this space, and it wouldn't happen without you allowing me to press record that one day.
No, we did this. You saw it. You saw it before any of us did, and that is why we're all here. And here in Nubia, I did pull up Nubia as you were talking. Thank you, Kemet. Always on the point. Kemet Uhuru, he dropped the Asala page, the ASLH, which has Black History Month's proclamation. So that's the official.
I was just sending you an email to send me that so we could put it on a poster. So there are exclusive things that are inside Nubia and Knarrative that only we can access, and I want this to be one of them. The way we have the Africana framework, I'm looking up because I have it on my wall right here. So I often refer to it.
Yes.
And Uriah's made it into a poster so we can
Yes.
all have it. I want to put
Yes.
that on a poster as well, and that we can put up on the wall. It's something artistic, but also, I think those 15 points every day should be something that we should embody. So
Oh,
great, so
absolutely.
brilliant. And being here with you, you realize the ideas that you have carry through space and time. My ideas are not original. Somebody had them, and
But
we
they're good. That's why they
but
continue.
we have to open ourselves to have access to it. Do you know what I'm
Yes.
saying? I'm really like I pray about this. I want to have access to it. It's not and when we get into this individual, egocentric thing, we lose the reality that there are thousands of years of access to information and people that we can plug into when we remove ourselves and plug in, literally plug in to what came before.
Oh, absolutely. 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 And you're right. The good ideas are good because they are timeless. And that's what actually that was the title of the eulogy that Mary Bethune wrote for her friend Carter Woodson. She said, I wanted to stop being the president. He wouldn't let me. He said, give me one more year. And then he made transition. Like what? But the name of the eulogy was True Leadership is Timeless. So for you to have for hear Woodson and to hear how this is the same.
And I
It's like,
never read that. So
right.
that there's something greater and more connected, because I never read him before you. So
Woodson is
this
something we did.
feels good. It feels good.
He's there. Oh yeah, and I see now on the YouTube side. I must mention her only because my eye caught somebody's giving her greetings, and that's our sister, the great Dr. Joyce King. Joyce King is one of the major thinkers, certainly over the last couple of generations in terms of curriculum and development research. She has done so much of this work. Her book on Black education. Now I'm looking around because I keep Dr. King. I keep all your books over here in this shelf where I got curriculum stuff, and so she's done a lot of this work. One of the junior proteges and extensions apprentices of St. Clair Drake. And so that takes you right back to Carter Woodson. So she's here. We gonna be all right, Prof.
We are. Let me welcome Nicole on the YouTube side. She said, "This is my first class." I appreciate you sharing your knowledge. It's wild to see people come in first time. She said, "I have so much to learn. Thank you for giving me a place to start on my path to enlightenment." You're welcome. There was a brother who, let me just said he lost his dad. This is his first February 1st without his father, and you think of Maxie of Tree, Stump, and Bird. My first February without my dad, he would have been 90 this month. He left Arkansas in 1955 and joined his brother in Indiana, the Great Migration. We have so many stories. This is
come on.
Like you said, I feel like they did us a favor.
I think maybe so.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. You didn't mean to do us a favor, but that's okay. You never mean it.
I'm gonna say less. Can we end with this ancestor?
I am.
Wait, hold on. Let me pause it, bring it
we
in.
just passed Jack Roosevelt Robinson's birthday and so many others. Oh, yes. Let's start with our sister.
When you talked about her, so young, on a plane, getting ready to start a new journey in a department that you teach in.
Yeah, to teach some young lawyers. Yeah.
The next generation, which is the edict, right? We all are here to do a thing. We're here to do a thing in a way. It's not about us.
It's not about us.
And as long as that, it makes it easier to do it when you know that you're not doing it for you. You're not doing it for now. You're doing it so that somebody can be inspired to do the thing. And that's the torch that we keep lighting, right? So that we can continue to see. This young lady is not here, but she's here. And hopefully if somebody's thinking about going to law school, listen to what she had to say about why she went to law school and what inspired her to become this thing. She may not be here breathing on this side, but now she's a mighty ancestor to inspire the next generation. Tia Duggins will say her name. And Dr. Carr, we're going to say your name too. I love you.
Love you. Love you too. Love you too, Professor Hunter. Love you too. Thank you. Let's listen to her.
And I am originally from Wichita, Kansas, and I went to Wichita Public Schools from kindergarten through college, and then I eventually went to and graduated from Harvard Law School, and now I work at an organization called Civil Rights Corps, where I litigate cases against police abuse and pretrial detention nationwide. And what brought me to this work is very personal. I'm a descendant of enslaved people who have been exploited economically and physically by our criminal legal system for hundreds of years. And to put a finer point on it, on the day that I took the LSAT exam, which is required to get into law school, my uncle was detained pretrial, was killed on the same day that I was there to take my LSAT. So my family has been very personally affected by pretrial detention and by the harms of the criminal legal system. And I went to law school to help remedy some of those harms and make sure that other people don't experience it. And Civil Rights Corps is actually the organization that filed the O'Donnell lawsuit that Ken just mentioned. And the goal of that lawsuit was to make sure that people who are charged with misdemeanors but who are legally innocent do not sit in cages pretrial simply because they cannot afford bail. And we actually were able to win that case. And studies since the O'Donnell decision came down have shown that crime has actually gone down in Harris County since the O'Donnell decision happened. So that's what brought me here, and I'm really excited to be here.